some promises don't break, even when everything else does. Daniel Harper has kept a secret that's costing him everything: promotions, friendships, his own future. His boss, Evelyn Cross, is about to shatter the carefully constructed walls he's built around his double life. In a Chicago office tower, one question will expose a truth so devastating it will change both their lives forever. This is the story of a man who chose loyalty over ambition, grief over freedom, and waiting over moving on, even when the world told him to let go. Stay until the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Mercer and Sterling Financial hummed their usual monotonous tune at 5:27 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday. Daniel Harper's fingers moved across his keyboard with the practiced efficiency of a man who had long ago mastered the art of doing exactly what was required and nothing more. His desk sat in the corner of the 32nd floor, positioned where the glass windows met at a right angle, offering a sweeping view of Chicago's skyline that he rarely bothered to appreciate anymore. 3 minutes. He didn't look at the clock. He didn't need to. His body had calibrated itself to the rhythm of 5:30 p.m., the way a sailor calibrates to the tides. At 5:28, he would close his files. At 5:29, he would shut down his computer. At 5:30, he would stand, collect his coat, and walk to the elevator with the same measured pace he used every single day. Around him, the office thrummed with the chaotic energy of people who stayed late to prove something: ambition, dedication, desperation. Phones rang. Keyboards clattered. Somewhere near the break room, 2 junior analysts argued about a discrepancy in a client's portfolio. Daniel heard none of it. He had become a master of selective awareness, filtering out everything that didn't serve the singular purpose that governed his life. "Harper, you got a second?" Daniel's fingers paused mid-keystroke. He knew that voice: sharp, confident, expensive. Evelyn Cross, the CFO. 34 years old and already running the financial operations of a firm that managed billions. She'd been hired 18 months ago, brought in to shake things up, to modernize, to push. She was everything the old guard despised and everything the new generation aspired to be. She was also persistent. "Miss Cross," Daniel acknowledged without turning around. His eyes remained fixed on his screen, watching the cursor blink. 5:28 p.m. "It's Evelyn. We've been over this." Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she approached his desk. "And yes, I know you're about to leave. I've watched you do it every day for the past 18 months. You're more reliable than the atomic clock." Daniel saved his document and began closing his files. Consistency is important in our line of work. Consistency. Evelyn circled around to the side of his desk, leaning against it in a way that forced him to either acknowledge her presence or be deliberately rude. "Is that what we're calling it?" For the first time, Daniel looked up. Evelyn Cross was striking in the way that powerful women often are. Not classically beautiful, but commanding. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled back in a style that was professional but not severe, eyes that missed nothing. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly mortgage payment, and she carried herself with the assurance of someone who had never been told she couldn't have exactly what she wanted. "Was there something you needed?" Daniel asked, his tone polite but distant. It was the same tone he used for everyone: colleagues, clients, the security guard in the lobby. Respectful, professional, impenetrable. "Actually, yes." Evelyn crossed her arms. "I need to understand why you just turned down the senior vice president position." Daniel had known this conversation was coming. He'd been dreading it since the moment he'd sent the email that morning, declining the promotion that 3 other analysts would have committed minor crimes to receive. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm content in my current role." "Content?" Evelyn repeated the word as if it tasted strange in her mouth. "Daniel, you're one of the best analysts in this firm. Your client retention rate is 97%. You've identified market trends 6 months before our competitors. Last quarter alone, your recommendations generated $43 million in revenue. And you're telling me you're content being a senior analyst?" "Yes." Daniel shut down his computer. 5:29 p.m. "That's not an answer. That's an evasion." "With respect, Ms. Cross." "Evelyn, my career decisions are my own." "Of course they are." Evelyn's voice softened slightly, but her eyes remained sharp. But when those decisions affect the firm's ability to retain top talent and plan for succession, they become my concern too. So I'm asking, not as your boss, but as someone who actually gives a damn, what's really going on? Daniel stood, reaching for his coat. The movement was deliberate, a clear signal that this conversation was over. I have responsibilities outside of work that require my full attention. The SVP position would demand evening hours, weekend availability, client dinners, travel. I can't commit to that schedule. Everyone has responsibilities, Daniel. We make it work. We hire help. We delegate. I can't delegate mine. The words came out harder than he'd intended, sharp enough that Evelyn actually took a step back. Around them, a few heads turned. Daniel rarely raised his voice, rarely showed any emotion at all. He was the quiet one, the steady one, the one who never caused problems or drama. He grabbed his coat and started toward the elevator. Evelyn followed. Daniel, wait. I'm sorry, but I really need to go. He pressed the elevator call button. The display showed the car was on the 41st floor, descending. Come on, come on. Is it childcare? Evelyn asked, her voice gentler now. Because we have programs for that. Flexible hours, work from home options. It's not childcare. Then what? Medicals issues? Aging parents? Student loans? She moved closer, lowering her voice. Whatever it is, we can find a solution. You're too valuable to lose to something that might be fixable. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Daniel stepped inside and immediately pressed the button for the ground floor, but Evelyn slipped in just before the doors closed. They stood in the small space, the elevator beginning its descent, neither speaking. 32nd floor, 31st, 30th. Why won't you date? The question hit Daniel like a physical blow. His hand, reaching for the button panel to steady himself as the elevator descended, froze midair. He stared at Evelyn, genuinely shocked for the first time in years. Excuse me? You heard me. Evelyn's expression was unreadable. You've been here 5 years. In that entire time, I've never seen you attend a single company social event. No holiday parties, no retirement dinners, no happy hours. You don't join us for lunch. You don't make small talk by the coffee machine. Sarah from accounting asked you out last year. She's gorgeous, accomplished, perfect on paper, and you turned her down so gently, she actually felt bad for asking. 25th floor, 24th. My personal life is, I know, none of my business. Evelyn held up her hands. But here's the thing, Daniel. This isn't just about work anymore. People talk. They wonder. They create stories to fill in the gaps because you give them nothing. Some think you're gay and closeted. Others think you're a priest outside of work. One ridiculous rumor suggested you're in witness protection. Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. I'm not in witness protection. Then what? Evelyn's voice dropped, losing all traces of the commanding CFO and revealing something more human underneath. Because watching you live like this, it's like watching someone slowly disappear. You're 42 years old, Daniel. You're brilliant, you're kind, you're, from what I understand, a wonderful father, but you're also completely alone, and I need to understand why someone would choose that. 15th floor, 14th. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion now, each floor taking an eternity. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest, a fissure in the carefully maintained wall he'd built between his work life and his real life. For 4 years, he'd kept them separate. No one at Mercer and Sterling knew about Laura. No one knew about the accident, the hospitals, the impossible decisions. They knew he had a daughter. Mia occasionally appeared in his desk photos, carefully cropped to show only her smiling face, but nothing more. He'd thought that was enough. He'd thought if he did his job well, if he was professional and reliable and never caused problems, people would just leave him alone. He'd been wrong. I'm not choosing to be alone, Daniel finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. The elevator continued its descent. 10th floor, 9th. I'm choosing to honor a commitment I made. There's a difference. What kind of commitment? 8th floor, 7th. The kind that doesn't expire just because life becomes unbearable. The elevator dinged, ground floor. The doors opened onto the marble lobby where security guards nodded at departing employees, and the evening cleaning crew was just beginning their rounds. Daniel stepped out, and for a moment he thought Evelyn would let him go, but she followed him across the lobby, matching his pace stride for stride. "Daniel, please, I'm sorry if I overstepped, but you can't just say something like that and walk away." He pushed through the revolving doors into the Chicago evening. October air, crisp and cold, hit his face. The streetlights were just beginning to flicker on as dusk settled over the city. Traffic hummed past on the street, a river of red taillights flowing south. Daniel turned left toward the parking garage where his 10-year-old Honda waited in its assigned spot. Evelyn stayed with him. "I have a daughter," Daniel said finally, not looking at Evelyn but staring straight ahead as he walked. "Mia, she's 8 years old. She likes drawing and reading and terrible pop music that makes my ears bleed. She believes in magic and second chances and happy endings." "That's wonderful, but what does—" "She also believes her mother is going to wake up." The words hung in the air between them. Evelyn stopped walking. Daniel kept going for a few more steps before he stopped too, his back still to her. Around them people flowed past, commuters heading home, tourists seeking dinner, street musicians setting up for the evening crowd. The world moved on, indifferent and eternal. When Daniel turned around, Evelyn's expression had changed entirely. The sharp, inquisitive CFO was gone. In her place stood a woman who suddenly understood she'd stumbled into something far more devastating than office politics or career planning. "Daniel," she breathed. "Her name is Laura. We've been married for 12 years. 4 years ago, we were driving home from a dinner party. I was tired, so she drove. A drunk driver ran a red light going 70 miles an hour." Daniel's voice remained steady, clinical almost, as if he were reciting facts from a financial report. The impact was on her side. She had a traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures, internal bleeding. They had to put her in a medically induced coma for the surgery. That was supposed to last a week. He paused, watching a couple walk past them hand in hand, laughing at something on one of their phones. "It's been 4 years. Laura is alive. She breathes on her own, her heart beats. All her vital signs are stable. But she doesn't wake up. She doesn't respond to stimulus. The doctors call it a persistent vegetative state. They say the chances of recovery after this long are effectively 0. "Oh my God!" Evelyn's hand moved to cover her mouth. "Daniel, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I never would have—" "Why would you know?" Daniel offered a small, sad smile. "I don't talk about it. Here, I'm just the analyst who leaves at 5:30. That's all I need to be." "But why? If people knew, they would understand. I don't want understanding." The words came out sharper than he intended. He took a breath, softening. "I don't want pity or sympathy or well-meaning advice about moving on. I don't want to be that guy whose wife is in a coma. I want to do my job, earn my salary, and support my daughter. That's it." Evelyn processed this, her analytical mind clearly working through the implications. "The 5:30 departure. You're visiting her." "Every day. The care facility is 20 minutes from here. I have from 6 to 7:30 with Laura. Then I pick up Mia from her grandparents. My in-laws, they watch her after school. We have dinner, I help with homework, we read together. Bedtime is at 8:30. Then I have about 3 hours before I need to sleep to do it all again." "That's—" Evelyn struggled for words. "That's an incredibly difficult way to live." "It's the only way I know how to live anymore." Daniel glanced at his watch. 5:47 p.m. He was already running late. "I need to go." "Of course, I'm sorry I kept you." Evelyn stepped back, giving him space. But her eyes held questions she was clearly struggling not to ask. "Daniel, the promotion, the question about dating, it's not just about work schedules, is it?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. In the distance, an ambulance siren wailed, that particular sound that always made his chest tighten with remembered panic. 4 years, and he still flinched at sirens. 3 months after the accident, he said slowly, Laura's parents held a memorial service. Not a funeral, she was still alive, but a memorial. They invited all our friends, showed photos, had people share stories about her in past tense. They thought it would help everyone move on, help me move on. "Did you go?" "No." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because Laura isn't dead. She's alive. She's my wife. And I made a vow. in sickness, and in health. Those words meant something to me. They still mean something. But Daniel, you're not... Evelyn caught herself, swallowing whatever she'd been about to say. What about you? What about your life? This is my life. He said it simply, as if explaining basic mathematics. Mia needs her father. Laura needs someone to be there. Someone to remember who she was and still is. I can't be senior vice president because that would mean less time with them. I can't date because I'm married. I can't go to company parties because those are hours I could spend reading to my wife or playing board games with my daughter. Every choice I make is simple when I remember what actually matters. And what matters is a woman who may never wake up. The question came out before Evelyn could stop it. She immediately looked horrified. I'm sorry, that was cruel. I shouldn't have... But Daniel wasn't angry. He looked at Evelyn with something that might have been understanding, or pity, or a combination of both. You think I'm wasting my life, he said quietly. You think I'm holding on to false hope, that I'm in denial, that I'm sacrificing my future for a past that's gone. You think I should accept reality, move on, find someone new. Give Mia a real mother. Give myself permission to be happy again. Evelyn said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. Maybe you're right, Daniel continued. Maybe the doctors are right, and Laura will never wake up. Maybe I am wasting years of my life sitting by her bedside, reading her book she can't hear, telling her about Mia's day at school, holding her hand. Maybe I should let go. He started walking again, slower now, and Evelyn fell into step beside him. But here's what I know, Daniel said. When I hold Laura's hand, sometimes, not often, but sometimes, her fingers twitch. When I read to her, her heart rate changes. The doctors say it's reflexive, meaningless, but they also said she'd be dead by now, and she's not. They said she'd need a feeding tube forever, and last year we started a successful oral feeding program. They said a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. They reached the parking garage. Daniel pulled out his key fob. More than that, though, he continued, I know what kind of man I want to be. I know what kind of father I want Mia to see. When things are easy, when love is convenient and uncomplicated, anyone can stay. But when it's hard, when there's no reward, no guarantee, no light at the end of the tunnel, that's when you find out what you're actually made of. He looked at Evelyn directly, and she was struck by the quiet intensity in his eyes. This was a man who had stared into the abyss and chosen to build a home there. I'm made of promises I intend to keep, Daniel said, even when keeping them costs me everything else. The garage elevator opened. Daniel stepped inside, then turned to face Evelyn one last time. You asked why I won't date, he said. It's not complicated. I'm married. My wife is alive. Until one of those things changes, my answer will always be no. To promotions, to parties, to well-meaning setups, to everything that takes me away from the life I've chosen. Chosen? Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. Daniel, you didn't choose this. An accident chose it for you. No. Daniel shook his head. The accident happened to us. How I respond to it, that's my choice. Every single day I choose. I choose Laura. I choose Mia. I choose to believe that showing up matters, even when there's no guarantee it makes a difference. That's not prison, Ms. Cross. That's purpose. The elevator doors began to close. Evelyn reached out, stopping them at the last second. One more question, she said urgently. What if, and I'm asking this with respect, I promise, what if she never wakes up? Will you still be doing this in 10 years, 20? Will you let your whole life pass by waiting for a miracle? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. In the fluorescent lighting of the parking garage, he looked older than his 42 years, worn down by a grief that had no endpoint. I don't know, he admitted finally. I honestly don't know. But I know who I am right now, in this moment. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm someone who keeps his promises. Tomorrow I might be different, but today I'm going to drive to Cedar Grove Care Facility, I'm going to sit by my wife's bedside, and I'm going to read her the next chapter of the book we started last week. Then I'm going to pick up my daughter, make her dinner, and tuck her into bed. And I'm going to feel grateful that I still get to do those things. He moved to press the button, but Evelyn's hand was still on the door. I judged you, she said softly. I thought you were wasting your talent, your potential. I thought you were choosing mediocrity over excellence. I was wrong. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I'm not brave. Daniel's smile was sad. Brave would be moving on, starting over, choosing life over memory. I'm just stubborn, and I'm late. This time when the doors closed, Evelyn let them. She stood in the entrance to the parking garage long after the elevator had descended, staring at the space where Daniel had been. Around her, Chicago moved through its evening rhythms. People rushing to catch trains, vendors packing up their carts, lights coming on in apartment windows like stars emerging in an urban sky. Evelyn had lived in the city for 6 years, climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency, attended countless networking events and charity galas, dated men who looked good on paper but felt empty in practice. She had thought she understood what it meant to be committed, to be dedicated, to sacrifice for something important. She had understood nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, the attorney she'd been casually seeing for the past 3 months. Drinks tonight? There's a new place in River North I want to try. Evelyn stared at the message for a long moment, then looked back toward the parking garage elevator. Somewhere below, Daniel Harper was getting into his sensible Honda, checking the time, calculating traffic patterns to minimize the minutes he'd lost talking to her. Every second mattered when you measured your life in visiting hours and bedtime routines. She typed back, "Can't tonight. Sorry." Then, after a pause, "Actually, I don't think this is working. You deserve someone who's actually present." Marcus responded immediately. "Wow. Okay. Out of nowhere, but okay." "Not out of nowhere," Evelyn typed. "I've just been reminded what real commitment looks like. And this isn't it." She didn't wait for his response. She turned off her phone and walked back toward the office building. The lobby was nearly empty now, just the security guard reading a paperback at his desk and one cleaning crew member emptying trash bins. "Working late, Ms. Cross?" the guard called out. "Something like that," Evelyn replied. But she didn't go back to her office. Instead, she took the elevator to the 32nd floor and walked to Daniel's desk in the corner, the one with the perfect view he never looked at. She stood there for a moment, seeing it with new eyes. The desk was almost obsessively organized, files in perfect stacks, pens lined up, a desk calendar with each day's tasks written in neat block letters. There were only 2 personal items, a framed photo of a little girl with dark curly hair and an enormous smile, holding up a drawing of what looked like a rainbow, and a small card, the kind that came with flowers, tucked half under his monitor. Evelyn knew she shouldn't, but she gently pulled the card out. The handwriting was feminine, loops and curves that suggested someone artistic. "To my Daniel, thank you for the beautiful flowers. You always know how to make me smile. All my love, Laura." The date stamp on the florist's card was from 4 years and 3 months ago, before the accident. Daniel had kept it all this time, a fragment of the life they'd had. Evelyn carefully replaced the card exactly where she'd found it. Then she sat down in the guest chair across from Daniel's desk, the chair where clients usually sat during portfolio reviews, and she let herself cry. She wasn't sure what she was crying for exactly. For Daniel and his impossible situation? For Laura, trapped in a twilight state between life and death? For Mia, growing up with a father who was present but a mother who wasn't? Or maybe for herself, for all the years she'd spent chasing success and advancement, thinking that's what mattered, that's what made a life worthwhile. 17 floors below, Daniel Harper merged into traffic, checking his mirrors, maintaining exactly the speed limit. His hands gripped the steering wheel at 10 and 2, the safe, proper position they'd taught him in driver's ed 25 years ago, the position he'd maintained religiously since the night Laura had driven and someone else's recklessness had shattered their world. The radio was off. He drove in silence, using the time to transition from work Daniel to Laura and Mia Daniel, letting the office fall away piece by piece until only what mattered remained. At a red light, he closed his eyes briefly. The doctor's words from his last meeting echoed in his mind, as they often did. "Mr. Harper, you need to consider quality of life, your quality of life, and frankly, your daughter's. This isn't sustainable. You're putting your entire existence on hold for someone who, medically speaking, is already gone. The light turned green. Daniel opened his eyes and drove forward. She's not gone, he thought, the same thought he'd had 1,000 times. She's waiting, and I'm going to be there when she comes back. If she came back. When, he corrected himself firmly. When she comes back. Because the alternative, accepting that the woman he'd married, the mother of his child, the person who'd known him better than anyone else ever had, was truly, irretrievably gone while her body kept breathing. That was unbearable. So he didn't bear it. He chose hope, however foolish, however unlikely. He chose to believe in tomorrow. Cedar Grove Care Facility appeared ahead, a low-rise building designed to look friendly and welcoming rather than institutional. Daniel had visited hundreds of care facilities in those first frantic months, searching for the perfect place. Cedar Grove wasn't the cheapest, wasn't the closest, wasn't the most prestigious, but the staff was kind, the rooms were bright, and they'd never once made him feel crazy for believing Laura might wake up. He parked in his usual spot, third row, fourth space from the door. The consistency mattered. Everything in his life now ran on routines and rituals, because routines were things you could control when everything else had spun wildly beyond your grasp. 6:03 p.m. He was 13 minutes late. Laura wouldn't know, couldn't know, but it bothered him anyway. The facility's automatic doors whooshed open. The lobby smelled like the particular combination of cleaning products and flowers that Daniel had come to associate with this specific kind of liminal space, not hospital, not home, something in between. "Evening, Daniel," called out Teresa, the evening receptionist. She was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and photos of approximately 1 million grandchildren covering her desk. "How was your day?" "It was fine, Teresa. How are the grandkids?" "Oh, loud, messy, perfect." She beamed. "Laura's all set for you. Margaret did her evening care about an hour ago." "Thanks." Daniel signed in at the visitor log. Another routine, another small structure in his carefully constructed life. "Has she had any visitors today?" Teresa checked her notes. "Carol and James came by around 3, stayed about 45 minutes. Laura's parents. They came 3 times a week, like clockwork. They loved their daughter. Daniel had never doubted that. But they'd also given up on her waking up, had stopped reading to her, had started speaking about her as if she were already a memory. Daniel couldn't blame them. Everyone had their breaking point. His just hadn't arrived yet. He walked down the hallway, left at the nurse's station, right at the physical therapy room, straight until room 237. The door was slightly ajar, soft light spilling out into the corridor. Daniel paused outside, the way he always did, preparing himself. No matter how many times he did this, it never got easier. He pushed open the door. Laura lay in the bed, positioned slightly upright, her dark hair brushed and neat around her face. She'd always had beautiful hair, thick and wavy, the kind women in shampoo commercials would envy. The staff here took care to maintain it, to keep her looking like a person rather than a patient. Her eyes were closed. They were always closed now, unless the nurses were doing eye care. Her face was peaceful, unlined, younger looking than her 39 years. The accident had frozen her in time while the rest of them aged forward. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel said softly, pulling up the chair that he'd donated to the facility specifically for this room. It was comfortable, supportive for long sitting sessions, and had arms at exactly the right height for him to hold Laura's hand while he read. "Sorry I'm late. Work ran long." He took her hand, warm, soft, very much alive. This was the thing people didn't understand about comas. They pictured something from TV, cold, corpse-like, obviously gone. But Laura was warm. Her chest rose and fell. Her heart beat steadily. If you didn't know, you might think she was just sleeping. "Mia drew you another picture today," Daniel continued, settling into his chair. This was their routine. He'd talk for a while, catch her up on life, then read. "Mrs. Patterson is having them do a unit on space. Mia drew the solar system, but she added a purple planet she says is called Planet Hope. She says it's where dreams come from. You'd love it." He paused, studying Laura's face for any flicker of response. Sometimes he convinced himself he saw something, a twitch at the corner of her mouth, a flutter of her eyelashes. The nurses assured him these were normal reflexive movements, nothing more. But sometimes Daniel let himself believe they were more. "Your mom and dad came by," he continued. "I know you can't hear their concerns, but I can. They think I should consider moving you to a less intensive facility, something more long-term focused. They're worried about the cost, about Mia, about me." He squeezed her hand gently. "They're not wrong to worry. This place costs $4,800 a month. Even with insurance covering part of it, we're burning through our savings. Mia's college fund is gone. I had to liquidate it last year. I've sold the house. We're renting a 2-bedroom apartment in a school district that's just good enough. I work as much overtime as they'll give me, and it's still barely enough." The machines around Laura beeped their steady rhythms. Heartbeat, oxygen saturation, all the mechanical sounds of a life sustained. "But we're managing," Daniel said firmly, "and we'll keep managing. Because you're going to wake up, Laura. I know everyone thinks I'm delusional, the doctors, your parents, probably half the staff here. But I know you. You're stubborn. You don't give up on things. Remember when you spent 6 months learning to make that perfect souffle? You must have failed 50 times, but you kept trying until you got it right." He reached into his bag and pulled out their current book, The Secret Garden, Laura's favorite from childhood. They'd been reading it together for the past few weeks, him reading aloud, her silent but present. Where were we? Daniel flipped through the pages until he found their bookmark, a drawing Mia had made of a garden with flowers in impossible colors. Ah, right. Chapter 17. He began to read, his voice filling the quiet room. Outside, the October evening deepened into night. Inside, Daniel Harper kept his vigil the way he had for 1,459 days and counting. He read until 7:25 p.m. when his phone alarm quietly buzzed, time to leave if he wanted to pick up Mia on schedule. He marked their place carefully, closed the book. "I'll be back tomorrow," he told Laura, leaning forward to kiss her forehead. Her skin was warm against his lips. "I love you. Keep fighting. Please keep fighting." Then, because he couldn't help himself, because some desperate part of him still believed in miracles, "If you can hear me, if you're in there somewhere, squeeze my hand. Just once, just a tiny bit." He waited, holding her hand, barely breathing. Nothing. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Laura's chest rose and fell. Her hand remained still in his. "Okay," Daniel whispered. "Tomorrow then. Maybe tomorrow." He stood, gathered his things, and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned back one more time. In the soft light of the care facility room, Laura Harper looked like she was simply sleeping, waiting for a gentle touch to wake her, waiting for tomorrow. Daniel forced himself to walk away, down the hallway, past the nurse's station, through the lobby where Teresa called out a cheerful goodbye. Out to his car, into the driver's seat, key in the ignition. And sitting there, in the parking lot of Cedar Grove Care Facility, Daniel Harper allowed himself exactly 60 seconds of the grief he kept locked away during the day. 60 seconds to press his forehead against the steering wheel and feel the full weight of his impossible, unbearable, utterly necessary life. Then he started the car, checked his mirrors, and drove to pick up his daughter. Because that's what you did when you were Daniel Harper. You kept going. You kept showing up. You kept your promises, even when, especially when, it would be so much easier to break them. The Harper family apartment sat on the 3rd floor of a converted brownstone in Lincoln Park, close enough to good schools but far enough from the lake that the rent stayed manageable. Daniel pulled into the building's small parking lot at exactly 7:42 p.m., right on schedule, despite the conversation that had delayed him at work. He sat in the car for a moment, letting the engine tick as it cooled, and forced himself to transition. Work Daniel was gone. Hospital Daniel had been left behind at Cedar Grove. Now he needed to be Dad Daniel, the version of himself that Mia needed, present, patient, strong enough to carry both of them through another evening. His in-laws' apartment was 2 blocks away, a deliberate choice when he'd had to sell the house. Carol and James Morrison had retired early from their respective careers. She'd been a librarian, he'd been an engineer, to help with Mia after the accident. They were good people, devoted grandparents, and they loved their granddaughter with a fierceness that Daniel appreciated even when it came wrapped in judgment about how he was handling things. The walk took 4 minutes. Daniel knew because he'd timed it, because everything in his life now operated on precision and schedules. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of someone's fireplace, and the distant sounds of the city settling into night. Lights glowed in apartment windows, families visible in snapshot moments, setting tables, watching television, living normal lives that felt increasingly foreign to Daniel. He climbed the steps to the Morrisons' building and pressed the buzzer. "Daniel?" Carol's voice crackled through the intercom. "It's me." The door buzzed open. Daniel climbed to the second floor, where Carol was already waiting in the doorway, her arms crossed over her cardigan. She was 62, gray-haired and elegant in the way of women who'd spent careers around books and quiet spaces. Her eyes, Laura's eyes, that same deep brown, tracked to Daniel with an expression caught between concern and disapproval. "You're late," she said. "I know. I'm sorry. There was an issue at work." "There's always an issue at work, or an issue at the facility, or an issue somewhere." Carol stepped back to let him in. "Mia's doing her reading homework in the den. She's already eaten. Thank you for feeding her. I'll reimburse you." "Don't be ridiculous," Carol's voice softened slightly. "She's my granddaughter, though speaking of money, Daniel, we need to talk." Daniel's stomach tightened. These talks were becoming more frequent. "Can it wait? I'd like to get Mia home. It's a school night." "It's always a school night, or a work night, or a visiting night. You're very good at avoiding conversations you don't want to have." "Carol, please. Not tonight." "When then?" She moved closer, lowering her voice so Mia wouldn't hear. "James and I went to see Laura today." The facility director pulled us aside. "They're concerned about the mounting bill. You're 3 weeks behind on payment, Daniel." He had known this was coming. The numbers didn't lie, and Daniel spent too much time with spreadsheets not to know exactly how underwater they were. "I have a plan. There's overtime available next month, and I'm expecting a performance bonus." "You turned down the promotion." The words landed like stones. Daniel stared at his mother-in-law. "How do you know about that?" "James plays golf with Richard Stevens from your firm's compliance department. Word travels." Carol's expression was pained. "Daniel, that position would have meant $50,000 more a year. Do you have any idea what that money could have done? For Mia's future? For Laura's care?" "The position required evening hours and weekend travel. I can't." "You can't or you won't." Carol's voice rose slightly, then caught herself. She glanced toward the den where Mia was, then pulled Daniel further into the entryway. "My daughter has been in a coma for 4 years. 4 years, Daniel. The doctors say there's no meaningful brain activity. They've been saying it for years, but you keep holding on, keep spending every resource we have, keep organizing your entire life around visiting someone who doesn't know you're there." "She knows." Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "I don't expect you to believe that, but she knows." "Based on what?" "A finger twitch that the neurologist explained was involuntary muscle response? A change in heart rate that could be attributed to anything?" Carol's eyes filled with tears. "I loved my daughter, Daniel. I love her still, but the Laura we knew is gone. What remains is a shell, sustained by machines and medication, and your refusal to accept reality. She breathes on her own. Fine, she breathes, but she doesn't speak, doesn't think, doesn't feel. And meanwhile, you're drowning. You've sold your house, depleted your savings, sacrificed your career advancement, and for what? So you can sit by her bedside and read books she can't hear?" Daniel felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the combination of grief and anger and bone-deep exhaustion that he'd become so accustomed to that it felt almost normal. "I made a promise." "We all make promises. In sickness and in health, yes. But there has to be a limit, Daniel, for your sake, for Mia's sake." Carol wiped her eyes. "My granddaughter's 8 years old. She should be running around, making friends, joining after-school activities. Instead, she's spending every evening here because you're at that facility, and then rushing home to squeeze in an hour with you before bed. This isn't a childhood. It's a holding pattern." "Mia is fine. She's well-adjusted. She's doing well in school. She draws pictures for a mother who can't see them," Carol's voice cracked. Every single day, Daniel. Every day she brings her little drawings to show Laura, and you take them to that facility, and you tape them on the walls of a room where my daughter lies unresponsive. Do you not see how heartbreaking that is? How we're teaching Mia to wait for something that will never happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. The doctors know it. James knows it. Deep down, you know it too. You're just too stubborn or too scared to admit it. Before Daniel could respond, a small voice called from the den. Daddy? Both adults immediately shifted, wiping away emotion, painting on smiles. Mia appeared in the doorway, her backpack already on her shoulders, a drawing clutched in one hand. She had Daniel's dark hair but Laura's features, a beautiful combination that sometimes hurt to look at because it was like seeing his wife at 8 years old. Hey, sweetheart, Daniel said, his voice transforming into something warm and gentle. Ready to go home? I finished my reading and I made this for Mommy. She held up the drawing, a crayon rendition of a hospital room with a woman in a bed and a man sitting beside her, holding her hand. The colors were bright, cheerful, completely at odds with the reality it depicted. Can we take it to her tomorrow? Daniel's heart cracked. Of course we can. She's going to love it. Carol made a small sound halfway between a sob and a sigh. Mia looked at her grandmother with concern. Grandma? Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Carol bent down to kiss Mia's forehead. You be good for your daddy, okay? I'm always good, Mia said matter-of-factly, which made Daniel smile despite everything. They said their goodbyes, Carol holding Daniel's gaze a moment too long, conveying all the things left unsaid. And then Daniel and Mia walked out into the October evening. Mia slipped her hand into his, and Daniel squeezed it gently. How was school today, Anne? He asked as they walked. Good. We're learning about the solar system. Did you know that Jupiter is so big that all the other planets could fit inside it? I did know that. Pretty amazing, right? Super amazing. Mia skipped a few steps, her backpack bouncing. Mrs. Patterson says we might take a field trip to the planetarium. Can I go? It's $20 for the ticket and lunch. $20. Daniel mentally calculated their budget. $20 meant choosing between that and Mia's art supplies, or the parking fee at Cedar Grove for the week. But he couldn't say no to the eager hope in his daughter's eyes. Of course you can go. Sounds like fun. You're the best, Daddy. Mia squeezed his hand. Can we have pancakes for dinner? I know it's Tuesday, but Grandma gave me soup and I'm not really full. Pancakes on Tuesday. That's pretty rebellious. Daniel grinned. I like it. Pancakes it is. Back at their apartment, Daniel unlocked the door to their modest two-bedroom space. It was clean but sparse. Most of their furniture had been sold with the house, and what remained was functional rather than decorative. The living room held a second-hand couch, a coffee table that wobbled slightly, and a TV that still worked despite being nearly a decade old. Mia's drawings covered the refrigerator and most of one wall, bright explosions of color in an otherwise neutral space. While Mia changed out of her school clothes, Daniel moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency. Pancakes were easy, required minimal ingredients, and Mia loved them. He mixed the batter while his daughter settled at the small dining table, pulling out her homework. Daddy, can I ask you something? Always. Mia chewed her lip, a gesture she made when she was working up courage. Jenny Robertson says her mom says that people in comas never wake up. She says it's just in movies. Daniel's hand stilled over the mixing bowl. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. This wasn't the first time Mia had brought home playground wisdom about her mother's condition, and it wouldn't be the last. Come here, sweetheart. Mia climbed down from her chair and came to stand beside him. Daniel crouched down to her level, meeting her eyes. Jenny's mom is partially right, he said gently. It is very rare for someone to wake up from a coma after a long time. The doctors would say the chances are very small. But not impossible. Not impossible. Daniel tucked a strand of hair behind Mia's ear. Your mom is very strong. Stronger than anyone I've ever known. And every day we hope that she's going to surprise everyone and wake up. But Mia, I need you to understand something important. Even if she doesn't wake up, even if the doctors are right, and this is how things are going to be, it doesn't change anything about how much she loves you. How can she love me if she's asleep? Because love doesn't stop just because someone can't show it the usual way. Your mom loved you from the moment she knew you existed. She used to talk to you before you were even born, singing songs and reading stories. And that love didn't go away just because she got hurt. It's still there, inside her, waiting. Mia processed this, her young face serious. Do you think she can hear us when we visit? I don't know, Daniel admitted. But I believe she can feel that we're there. And I know that talking to her, reading to her, showing her your beautiful drawings, those things matter. They remind her that she has people who love her and are waiting for her. Oh, like we're being her memory? The wisdom of children never ceased to amaze Daniel. Exactly like that. We're keeping all the love and memories safe until she can hold them herself again. Okay? Mia seemed satisfied with this answer. I'm going to make her an extra special drawing tomorrow, with glitter. She'll love that. Daniel stood, returning to the pancakes. Now, homework. What do you have left? Just spelling words. I have to write sentences with them. They fell into their evening routine, Daniel cooking while Mia worked on her homework, soft music playing from his phone, the ordinary domestic rhythm that grounded them both. These hours, from dinner until bedtime, were Daniel's favorite part of the day. Here, in their small apartment with his daughter chattering about her day, he could almost pretend they were a normal family. Almost. After pancakes, which Mia declared the best ever, though she said that every time, Daniel washed dishes while Mia brushed her teeth and got into her pajamas. Then came the part of the routine they both cherished. Reading time. They curled up on Mia's bed, a twin mattress with a comforter covered in stars and moons. The walls around them displayed Mia's artwork, layer upon layer of drawings in various stages of skill development. Daniel recognized the progression, early stick figures evolving into more detailed scenes, the fine motor control improving month by month. There were drawings of families, of houses, of animals and flowers and fantastical creatures. And in almost every single one, there was a woman in a bed and a girl holding her hand. What are we reading tonight? Daniel asked, though he already knew. They'd been working through the Chronicles of Narnia, and Mia was obsessed. The Silver Chair! We're at the part where Jill meets the giants. They read together, Daniel's voice bringing the story to life, while Mia leaned against him, occasionally interrupting to ask questions or make observations. This intimacy, this closeness, was everything. If anyone asked Daniel what kept him going, this was the answer. Not hope for Laura's recovery, not stubborn principle, but these moments with his daughter, proof that even in their fractured circumstances, love persisted. At 8:30, Daniel closed the book and tucked Mia in. Sleep tight, sweetheart. Daddy, do you think Mommy dreams? The question hit Daniel unexpectedly. He sat on the edge of the bed, stroking Mia's hair. What makes you ask that? I had a dream last night that she came home. She was wearing her blue dress, the one in the picture on your dresser, and she made us breakfast. Real breakfast, not pancakes for dinner. Mia smiled sleepily. It felt really real, like she was really there. Maybe she was, Daniel said softly. Maybe part of her can visit us in dreams, even if she can't wake up yet. That's what I think too. Mia yawned. I hope she dreams about us. I'm sure she does. Sweet dreams, sweetheart. Sweet dreams, Daddy. Daniel turned off the light but left the door cracked open, the way Mia liked it. Then he retreated to the living room where the weight of the day finally caught up with him. He sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, letting his mind drift through the events of the past few hours. Evelyn's questions, Carol's concerns, Mia's innocent hope, the bills stacking up on his desk, the promotion he'd turned down, the life he was choosing day after day despite everyone telling him he was wrong. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Daniel, this is Evelyn Cross. I got your number from HR. I hope that's okay. I wanted to apologize for today. I overstepped badly, and I'm sorry. I had no right to pry into your personal life. Daniel stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. No apology necessary. You asked reasonable questions. I'm just not used to talking about it at work. The reply came quickly. I can understand why. Thank you for being honest with me. It was brave, not brave, just tired of carrying it alone sometimes. Daniel sent the message before he could second-guess it. There was something about the day's confrontation that had cracked his usual reserve. For 4 years, he'd kept his work life and personal life completely separate. Now Evelyn knew. And surprisingly, Daniel felt something like relief. Another text. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. What you're doing, it matters. Even if you don't see the results you're hoping for, the act of showing up matters. Daniel's throat tightened. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that until the words appeared on his screen. Everyone else in his life, Carol, James, well-meaning friends who'd drifted away, had spent years telling him to let go, move on, accept reality. No one had told him that what he was doing was okay, that it was enough. Thank you, he typed. That means more than you know. He set the phone down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would wake up at 5:30 a.m., go through his morning routine, get Mia ready for school, drop her at her grandparents' place, go to work, leave at 5:30 p.m., visit Laura, pick up Mia, come home, and do it all again. The same pattern he'd followed for 1,459 days. The same pattern he'd follow tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. Unless something changed. But change, Daniel had learned, was rarely something you could control. So he did what he could control. He showed up. He kept his promises. He loved his daughter. He stayed faithful to his wife. It was both everything and not nearly enough. The next morning unfolded with its usual precision. Daniel woke before his alarm, showered, made coffee, prepared Mia's lunch, and gently woke his daughter at 6:45. They moved through breakfast together, Mia still sleepy-eyed and cuddly in a way she wouldn't be in a few more years. Daniel tried not to think about that, about time passing, about Mia growing up with a mother who was frozen in time. At work, Daniel expected things to be awkward after yesterday's revelation, but Evelyn didn't appear. He went through his morning meetings, reviewed client portfolios, and lost himself in the comfortable rhythm of financial analysis. Numbers were predictable. They followed rules. They made sense in a way that life often didn't. At lunch, he ate at his desk as usual until someone knocked on the wall of his cubicle. "Harper, you got a minute?" Daniel looked up to find Marcus Chen, one of the other senior analysts and probably the closest thing Daniel had to a friend at the office. Marcus was 45, divorced, and remarkably good at reading people. "Sure, what's up?" Marcus glanced around, then lowered his voice. "I heard you had a conversation with Cross yesterday." "Word travels fast. This is a financial firm. Gossip is our secondary currency." Marcus pulled up a chair. "Are you okay? People are saying she cornered you about the promotion." "She asked some questions. I answered them." Daniel kept his tone neutral. "Look, I don't mean to pry, but..." Marcus hesitated. "You've worked here 5 years. In that time, I've watched you turn down 3 promotions, refuse every social invitation, and maintain a schedule so rigid it makes Swiss watches look sloppy. And I've never asked why because I figured it was none of my business." "It isn't." "I know, but here's the thing." Marcus leaned forward. "My daughter goes to the same school as yours. Mia, right? Sweet kid, great artist. My daughter Isabella has her in art class." Daniel felt a flicker of concern. "Is there a problem with Mia?" "No, nothing like that. She's wonderful. But Isabella came home yesterday talking about how Mia's mom is in the hospital and has been for years, and Mia visits her every day, and..." Marcus stopped. "I didn't know, Daniel. All this time, I didn't know. I don't broadcast it." "Clearly." Marcus studied him with an expression that was hard to read. "I can't imagine what that's like. How you do it, the balance, the stress, the everything." "You just do." Daniel's standard answer. "No, you don't just do." Marcus's voice was gentle. "Most people would have crumbled by now. The fact that you're still standing, still working, still parenting, that's remarkable." Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Marcus stood, preparing to leave, then paused. "If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, I'm around. Even if it's just someone to talk to who won't judge or offer unsolicited advice." "Thanks, Marcus." After he left, Daniel sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. In less than 24 hours, his carefully compartmentalized life had started bleeding together. Evelyn knew. Marcus knew. Soon everyone would know. And and the pity would start. The careful avoidance, the whispered conversations that stopped when he walked by. He'd spent 4 years building walls to prevent exactly this. His phone rang, Cedar Grove's number. Daniel answered immediately, his heart rate spiking. Calls from the facility during the day were never routine. "Mr. Harper, this is Denise from nursing. Is Laura okay?" "She's fine. Stable. But we did want to let you know she had an episode this morning during morning care. Her heart rate spiked unexpectedly, and she showed some agitation. The doctor checked her over and everything's back to normal now, but we thought you should know." Agitation? What kind of agitation? Some movement in her extremities, facial responses. It lasted about 90 seconds, then subsided. Dr. Reynolds believes it was likely a neurological event, possibly a minor seizure, but there's no immediate cause for concern. Daniel gripped the phone. "I'll come over at lunch." "That's not necessary, Mr. Harper. She's resting comfortably now. But if you want to speak with Dr. Reynolds, he'll be in this afternoon." "I'll be there during my regular visiting hours." "Thank you for calling." Daniel hung up and immediately began calculating. He could move some meetings, finish the quarterly reports early, leave by 4:30 instead of 5:30. That would give him an extra hour with Laura, time to speak with the doctor, to see for himself that she was okay, except Mia. If he left early, he'd still have to pick her up at the regular time, which meant only 30 minutes with Laura instead of 90. The constant calculus of his life. Work versus wife versus daughter. Every minute allocated, every choice a sacrifice of something else. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Can you stop by my office before you leave today? Nothing urgent, just want to discuss something." Daniel almost declined, but curiosity won out. He typed back, 4:15? Perfect. The afternoon crawled by, minutes feeling like hours as Daniel tried to focus on work, while his mind was at Cedar Grove, imagining Laura's episode, wondering what it meant. The doctors always dismissed these things as reflexive, meaningless. But what if they were wrong? What if Laura was trying to wake up, fighting her way back, and everyone was too quick to explain it away? At 4:10, Daniel saved his work and headed to Evelyn's office on the executive floor. Her assistant waved him through, and Daniel found Evelyn standing by her window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. "Daniel, thanks for coming." She turned, and her expression was softer than he'd ever seen it. "Please, sit." Daniel sat in one of the leather chairs across from her desk. "What did you want to discuss?" Evelyn took a breath, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about what you said about choosing to honor your commitment, and I realized something." She moved to her desk, pulling out a folder. "I've been CFO here for 18 months. In that time, I've implemented new systems, cut costs, improved efficiency. I've made this firm more profitable, but I haven't made it more human. I'm not sure I follow. This firm has policies, generous ones actually, for family medical leave, flexible scheduling, even sabbaticals for personal circumstances. But they're not advertised, not encouraged. They exist on paper, but not in practice." Evelyn opened the folder. "I want to change that, starting with you." She slid a document across the desk. Daniel picked it up, scanning the contents. It was a proposal for a modified work schedule, shorter days, work-from-home options, maintained salary, and benefits. "I can't accept this," Daniel said immediately. "Why not?" "Because it's special treatment, because other people would resent it, because you've spent 4 years believing you have to do everything alone and accepting help feels like failure?" Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "Daniel, this isn't charity. It's a company recognizing that you have extraordinary circumstances and making reasonable accommodations. We do it for people with medical conditions, with disabilities, with other personal situations. Why not for you?" "I don't need pity." "This isn't pity. It's practicality." Evelyn sat on the edge of her desk. "You're one of our best analysts. I don't want to lose you because the schedule is unsustainable. And more than that, as someone who spent yesterday evening thinking about what kind of leader I want to be, I don't want to work for a company that chews people up and spits them out when life gets hard." Daniel read through the proposal again. Reduced hours, flexibility for medical emergencies, protected time for family obligations. It was everything he needed and everything he'd never thought to ask for. "Think about it," Evelyn said. Talk to your family. But Daniel, please understand you don't have to carry all of this alone, and accepting support doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes. Why are you doing this? Because yesterday you showed me what real commitment looks like. And because I have the power to make someone's impossible life slightly less impossible, and if I don't use that power, what's it even for? She smiled slightly. Also, selfishly, I want to retain my best analyst, but mostly the other stuff. Daniel felt something unfamiliar in his chest, a loosening, a lightening. For 4 years, he'd held everything so tightly, convinced that any slack would mean everything falling apart. But maybe, just maybe, he could let someone help carry the weight. I'll think about it, he said quietly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to make you actually use vacation days next year. Evelyn's tone turned mock stern. When was the last time you took a day off that wasn't for a medical emergency? Daniel couldn't remember. The answer was probably never. That's what I thought. Evelyn walked him to the door. Go visit your wife. And Daniel? Whatever happens, whether she wakes up or not, what you're doing matters. The showing up, the staying faithful, the keeping promises. It matters. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice, and headed for the elevator. At Cedar Grove, he found Dr. Reynolds waiting in Laura's room, reviewing charts. The doctor was in his 60s, gray-haired and grandfatherly, the kind of physician whose bedside manner came from decades of delivering difficult news. Mr. Harper, good. I was hoping to catch you. Denise called about the episode this morning. What happened? Dr. Reynolds pulled up chairs for both of them. Laura showed some unusual neurological activity during morning care. Elevated heart rate, some facial responses, movement in her hands and arms. It lasted about 90 seconds, then subsided. Could she be waking up? The doctor's expression was kind but firm. Mr. Harper, we've discussed this before. What you're describing, isolated neurological responses, these are not indicators of consciousness. They're reflexive responses, similar to what you'd see in, don't say vegetables, please. I was going to say similar to what we see in sleep states. The brain is capable of producing these responses without conscious awareness. But her heart rate increased. She moved. That has to mean something. Dr. Reynolds sighed. It means her brainstem and autonomic nervous system are functioning, which we already knew. I understand you want this to be a sign of recovery, but you said when she first came here that recovery after 6 months was unlikely. It's been 4 years and she's still alive. You said she'd need a feeding tube permanently, and now she's on an oral feeding program. You keep telling me what's not possible, and she keeps proving you wrong. Mr. Harper, Daniel, I'm not trying to crush your hope, but I have a responsibility to be honest with you about your wife's prognosis. The doctor leaned forward. The likelihood of meaningful recovery at this point is infinitesimal, and I worry about you, about your daughter. You're organizing your entire life around a possibility that, medically speaking, is nearly impossible. Daniel stood, moving to Laura's bedside. She looked peaceful in the afternoon light, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. He took her hand and, as always, hoped for some response, some sign. Nothing. Nearly impossible isn't the same as completely impossible, Daniel said quietly, and until it is, I'm going to keep showing up. Dr. Reynolds gathered his charts. I respect your dedication. I just hope, when the time comes to make difficult decisions, you'll be able to put your daughter's needs first. After the doctor left, Daniel sat with Laura in silence. He should read to her, continue their book, but he couldn't find the energy. Instead, he just held her hand and let himself feel the full weight of what everyone was telling him. Let go, move on, accept reality. But how did you accept that the person you loved most was gone when she was right here, warm and breathing? How did you move on when you'd promised forever? I don't know what to do, Daniel whispered to his unconscious wife. Everyone says I'm wrong. Everyone says you're not coming back. And maybe they're right, but Laura, I can't give up on you. I can't be the one who decides you're not worth waiting for. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Laura didn't respond, but Daniel stayed anyway, holding her hand, keeping his vigil. Because that's what love looked like when it wasn't easy or convenient or guaranteed. It looked like showing up, day after day, even when everyone told you to stop. It looked like hope in the face of medical impossibility. It looked like Daniel Harper, sitting by his wife's bedside, reading her stories she couldn't hear and believing, despite everything, that tomorrow might be different. 3 weeks passed in the same rhythm that had governed Daniel's life for 4 years. He accepted Evelyn's modified schedule proposal, though the guilt gnawed at him every time he left at 4 instead of 5:30, even though those extra 90 minutes with Laura had become sacred. Mia noticed the change, the way children always notice shifts in their carefully constructed universes, and she seemed lighter somehow, as if having more time with her father in the evenings gave her permission to be more of a child and less of someone perpetually waiting. The October weather turned sharp and cold, the kind of Chicago autumn that promised an early winter. Daniel walked through the mornings with Mia bundled in her new coat, her chatter filling the air with stories about school and friends and the elaborate fantasy world she'd constructed where her mother was a sleeping princess waiting for true love's kiss. He never corrected her, never explained that real life didn't work like fairy tales. Let her have her stories. Let her have hope in whatever form she could grasp it. On a Thursday afternoon, as Daniel was preparing to leave work, his phone rang with Cedar Grove's number. His heart performed its familiar lurch, that spike of adrenaline that came every time the facility called unexpectedly. Mr. Harper, this is Margaret from Day Shift Nursing. Nothing urgent, but we wanted to give you a heads up. We're having a corporate visit today. The Ashford Foundation is here doing their quarterly review of facilities they support with grants. They may be in Laura's room when you arrive. Daniel frowned. I didn't know Cedar Grove received foundation support. It's a newer arrangement. The foundation focuses on long-term care facilities with specialized programs. They tour periodically to evaluate grant effectiveness. Margaret's voice carried a note of apology. I know you value your privacy during visits, so I wanted to warn you there might be extra people around. I appreciate that. What time will they be there? They're scheduled for rounds between 5 and 6. Perfect. Right during his visiting window, Daniel thanked Margaret and hung up, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. He valued his time with Laura precisely because it was private, intimate, a space where he could let down the walls he maintained everywhere else. The thought of strangers observing, evaluating, taking notes on his grief felt intrusive, but he wouldn't skip a visit. He never skipped visits. At 4:15, Daniel shut down his computer and headed for the elevator. Evelyn was stepping out just as he was stepping in, her arms full of folders and her phone pressed to her ear. She mouthed a greeting, and Daniel nodded back, grateful that their new arrangement had settled into comfortable professionalism. She'd stopped pushing him toward promotions or social events, and in return, he'd stopped treating her inquiries as invasions of privacy. The drive to Cedar Grove took its usual 20 minutes. Daniel used the time to mentally transition, letting work concerns fall away, preparing himself to be present for Laura. The modified schedule had given him something unexpected, less exhaustion, more capacity to actually be there rather than just going through the motions. Maybe Evelyn had been right. Maybe accepting help wasn't weakness. The facility's parking lot was more crowded than usual. Daniel recognized the sleek black town car near the entrance as the kind that ferried corporate executives and foundation boards. He parked in his usual spot and walked through the automatic doors, bracing himself for whatever disruption this visit would bring. Teresa looked up from the reception desk with an expression of suppressed excitement. Daniel, you should know. Margaret called. The foundation visit. I know. They're on the second floor now, should be to Laura's wing in about 15 minutes. Teresa leaned forward conspiratorially. The woman leading the tour is impressive. Young, sharp, asks all the right questions. She actually seems to care about the patients rather than just checking boxes. Daniel signed in mechanically. That's good. We could use more people who care. He walked the familiar path to room 237, hoping to get at least a few minutes alone with Laura before the corporate delegation arrived. But as he rounded the corner, he saw 3 people already standing outside Laura's door, clipboards in hand, speaking in low voices. Daniel slowed, debating whether to wait or proceed. Before he could decide, one of the 3 looked up. A woman in her 30s, professionally dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. Their eyes met. Daniel's breath caught. It was Evelyn. For a moment, they both froze, recognition and confusion playing across their faces. Then Evelyn said something to her companions and walked toward Daniel, her expression shifting from surprise to something more complex. Daniel, I didn't realize... She stopped, glancing back at Laura's room. You visit here. This is Cedar Grove. Daniel's mind was racing, trying to make sense of this collision between his carefully separated worlds. You're the Ashford Foundation? I'm on the board. My family established the foundation 15 years ago. Evelyn looked genuinely uncomfortable, a rare expression for her. We focus on long-term care facilities with innovative programs. Cedar Grove applied for a grant to expand their neurological rehabilitation program. And you didn't know Laura was here? How would I? Evelyn's voice was gentle. You never told me which facility. I knew you visited someone every day, but... Understanding dawned across her face. Your wife is a patient here. That's why you're here. Daniel nodded, still processing the impossibility of this moment. Of all the care facilities in Chicago, of all the foundations that might support them, of course Evelyn's family's organization would be involved with Cedar Grove. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. I should go, Evelyn said quickly. Let you have your visit. I'll tell the team to skip this room. No. The word came out before Daniel fully thought it through. You should do your evaluation. Cedar Grove is a good facility. They deserve whatever support they can get. Daniel, I'm not going to intrude on your private time with your wife so I can check boxes on a corporate review. It's not an intrusion if I'm inviting you. Daniel surprised himself with the words, but once they were out, he realized he meant them. For 4 years, he'd kept his worlds separate, but maybe that separation had cost him something too. Maybe letting someone see the full truth of his life wasn't weakness, but a different kind of strength. Evelyn studied him carefully. Are you sure? I'm sure. Daniel walked past her toward Laura's room. Come on, I'll introduce you. The room was exactly as it always was, soft light filtering through the window, machines humming their familiar rhythms, Laura positioned peacefully in her bed. But seeing it through Evelyn's eyes, Daniel suddenly noticed details he'd long stopped registering. The walls covered in Mia's drawings, layer upon layer, a gallery of childhood hope. The shelf holding books they'd read together, their current selection marked with a crayon bookmark. The small table crowded with framed photos of their life before. Wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, Mia as a newborn cradled in Laura's arms. Laura, Daniel said softly, moving to her bedside and taking her hand in the gesture that had become as automatic as breathing. We have a visitor today. This is Evelyn Cross. She's from my work, and she's here to help make sure you're getting the best care possible. Evelyn stood in the doorway, and Daniel saw her professional composure crack slightly. She'd known abstractly about Laura, but knowing and seeing were different things. This was a real person, not a theoretical patient in a theoretical care facility. A woman with dark hair going slightly gray at the temples, with fine lines around her eyes that spoke of years lived before this suspended existence, with hands that Daniel held with such tenderness it was almost painful to witness. She was a teacher, Daniel said, his voice steady, though his eyes never left Laura's face. 3rd grade. She loved it, loved the kids, loved that age when they're still curious about everything and haven't learned to be cynical yet. She used to say that 8-year-olds are the perfect humans, old enough to think for themselves but young enough to still believe in magic. Mia's age, Evelyn said quietly. Mia's age. Daniel smiled slightly. Laura was pregnant when we got married. Not ideal timing by conventional standards, but we didn't care. We'd been together since college, and we knew we wanted a life together. Mia just accelerated the timeline. He stroked Laura's hand with his thumb, an unconscious gesture. Laura used to joke that she was going to be one of those embarrassing moms who understood all her daughter's references because she was still young enough to be cool. She made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, I wouldn't let Mia forget how funny she was, how she did terrible impressions of celebrities and couldn't sing to save her life but sang anyway. You're keeping that promise, Evelyn observed. I'm trying. Daniel finally looked up at her. Every night at dinner, I tell Mia a story about her mother. Some of them Mia was there for and doesn't remember. Some happened before she was born. I'm trying to build a complete picture so that whether Laura wakes up or not, Mia will know who her mother really was. Evelyn moved further into the room, her professional clipboard forgotten. May I? She gestured toward the drawings on the wall. Of course. Evelyn studied the artwork, and Daniel watched her face as she took in the progression. Early crayon scribbles giving way to more sophisticated drawings, but the theme always the same: a girl and her mother, together or separated by circumstance but always connected. In one drawing, they held hands across a rainbow bridge. In another, the girl was reading to the mother. In a third, they were both sleeping, their dreams illustrated in thought bubbles full of flowers and stars. These are remarkable, Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. She's so talented. She gets it from Laura. Laura could draw, could paint, could make anything beautiful. We used to joke that I got the analytical brain and she got the creative soul, and somehow that made us balanced. Daniel's voice caught slightly. I keep thinking about all the things Laura is missing. Mia's first lost tooth, her school plays, the way she's starting to read chapter books by herself, all these moments that Laura should be here for. But she is here, Evelyn said gently. Not in the way you want, but you're making sure she's still part of Mia's life. These drawings, the stories you tell, the visits, you're keeping her present. Sometimes I wonder if that's cruel, if I'm teaching Mia to hold on to something that's already gone. Or you're teaching her that love doesn't have conditions, that you don't abandon people when things get hard. Evelyn turned from the drawings to face Daniel fully. What you told me in the parking garage that day, about being made of promises you intend to keep, I've thought about that every day since. You're showing Mia what integrity looks like in practice, not just theory. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He pulled the book from the shelf. They'd finished The Secret Garden and moved on to Anne of Green Gables, another of Laura's childhood favorites, and settled into his chair. This is what we do, he said simply. I read, she listens, or doesn't listen. The doctors say it doesn't matter, that she can't process language anymore. But I think they're wrong. I think somewhere inside she hears me, and even if she doesn't, it matters to me. It's how I stay connected to her. May I stay? Evelyn asked. I know it's personal, and I'll leave if you want privacy. But I'd like to witness this, if you'll allow it. Not as your boss, not as a foundation board member, but as someone who's trying to understand what real devotion looks like. Daniel considered this. Every instinct told him to maintain his boundaries, to keep this sacred space separate from the rest of his life. But he'd already let Evelyn in, and somehow her presence didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like witness, and maybe that was something he needed. You can stay, he said. But fair warning, Anne of Green Gables gets pretty emotional. Evelyn pulled up a chair, positioning herself where she could see Laura's face without intruding on Daniel's usual spot. I can handle it. Daniel opened the book and began to read. His voice was steady, warm, bringing Lucy Maud Montgomery's words to life with the ease of someone who'd spent years reading aloud. He read about Anne's arrival at Green Gables, her fierce imagination, her desperate need to belong. And as he read, Evelyn watched Laura's face, looking for any sign of response. At first there was nothing, just the steady rise and fall of Laura's chest, the quiet beeping of monitors. But then, during a particularly emotional passage where Anne spoke about the pain of not being wanted, something shifted. Laura's heart rate, displayed on the monitor beside her bed, increased slightly. Not dramatically, not enough to trigger alarms, but noticeably. Evelyn glanced at Daniel, wondering if he'd noticed. But he was focused entirely on Laura's face, his voice never faltering, continuing the story with complete presence. Then Laura's hand, resting in Daniel's, twitched. Daniel stopped mid-sentence. The room fell silent except for the machines. Did you see that? Evelyn breathed. I saw it. Daniel's voice was carefully controlled, but his eyes were bright. Laura? Sweetheart, can you hear me? If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. They waited. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Nothing. Daniel's shoulders sagged slightly. It's probably just reflexive. That's what the doctors always say. Involuntary muscle response, not conscious action. But what if they're wrong? Evelyn leaned forward. What if she is in there, trying to communicate? I can't let myself think that way. Daniel's voice was strained. 4 years, Evelyn. 4 years of watching for signs, interpreting every twitch and heart rate change as meaningful, only to have the doctors explain it away as reflex. I can't keep riding that roller coaster. It's destroying me. Then why do you keep coming? Why do you keep reading to her, talking to her, holding her hand? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with suppressed emotion. Because what if the one day I don't come is the day she wakes up? What if the moment I give up is the moment she comes back? I can't live with that possibility. I can't be the reason she wakes up alone. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. She'd built a career on rational decision-making, on cutting losses and maximizing returns. But this wasn't about rationality. This was about a man who had chosen love over logic, hope over probability, faith over evidence. I'm going to do something, Evelyn said suddenly. And you're going to think it's overstepping, but I don't care. Daniel looked at her warily. What are you talking about? The Ashford Foundation grant. We were considering $40,000 for Cedar Grove's rehabilitation program expansion. I'm going to recommend $100,000 with a specific provision that a portion be allocated to Laura's care. Evelyn held up her hand as Daniel started to protest. Before you argue, this isn't charity to you. This is the foundation investing in a facility that clearly provides exceptional long-term care. The fact that your wife is a patient here is coincidental. Evelyn, I can't. You're not. The foundation is. And frankly, after seeing this, she gestured around the room at the drawings and photos and evidence of years of devoted care. I'm convinced that Cedar Grove represents exactly the kind of facility we should be supporting. They're not just warehousing patients, they're maintaining dignity and providing hope. Daniel stared at her, something working in his jaw. Why are you doing this? Because 3 weeks ago you showed me what my life was missing. You showed me what it looks like to actually commit to something beyond quarterly earnings and career advancement. Evelyn's voice softened. I've dated men who couldn't commit to weekend plans, let alone another human being. I've spent years thinking that dedication to work was the same as dedication to something meaningful. And then I met someone who visits his wife every single day for 4 years, who reads to her even though she might not hear, who organizes his entire life around honoring a promise most people would have abandoned years ago. That doesn't make me special. That makes me stubborn. It makes you extraordinary. Evelyn stood, moving toward the window. Do you want to know what I did last night? I went home to my luxury condo, ordered takeout, and watched 3 hours of television I won't remember by tomorrow. That's my life. That's what I've built with all my ambition and success. Meanwhile, you're living a life with real meaning, real purpose, even though it's costing you everything. You're romanticizing my nightmare. Maybe. Evelyn turned back to face him. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly. You asked me once what I thought about your situation. I didn't answer honestly then, so I'll answer now. I think you're living the hardest kind of love there is. The kind without rewards or recognition, the kind that costs you daily, the kind that no one else understands. And I think the world would be a better place if more people loved like you do. Daniel looked down at Laura's peaceful face, his thumb still moving across the back of her hand in that unconscious, soothing gesture. You're giving me too much credit. Half the time I'm not being noble. I'm just terrified. Terrified of making the wrong choice, of giving up too soon, of Mia asking me someday why I didn't fight harder for her mother. That's still love. Love isn't always noble or pure or easy. Sometimes it's just showing up when you're terrified and doing it anyway. Before Daniel could respond, his phone alarm buzzed softly. 7:15. Time to leave to pick up Mia. I have to go, he said quietly, standing and carefully placing Laura's hand back on the bed. He leaned down to kiss her forehead, his lips lingering against her skin. I'll be back tomorrow, sweetheart. I love you. Keep fighting. He straightened, collecting his book and coat, and Evelyn saw the transformation happen in real time. The husband who sat by his wife's bedside shifted into the father who needed to pick up his daughter, shoulders straightening, expression lightening, preparing for the next role in his carefully orchestrated life. Thank you for letting me stay, Evelyn said as they walked out together. I know that wasn't easy. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Daniel paused at the nurse's station, exchanging brief pleasantries with the evening staff about Laura's day. Then they continued toward the parking lot, stepping out into the October evening. The sky was that particular deep blue that comes just after sunset, stars beginning to emerge despite the city's light pollution. A cold wind swept through the parking lot, carrying the scent of coming winter. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said as they reached their cars. "And you can tell me it's none of my business. You've already seen me at my most vulnerable. I think we're past boundaries at this point. Do you ever resent her, Laura, for leaving you with this impossible situation?" Daniel was quiet for so long that Evelyn thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Every day," he admitted. "I resent her for driving that night, even though I was the one who was tired. I resent her for being hurt instead of me. I resent her for being in that coma while I have to make all the decisions, earn all the money, parent our daughter alone. I resent her for not waking up, and I resent her for not dying, because at least then I'd know how to grieve." He looked at Evelyn, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "And then I hate myself for resenting her, because none of this is her fault. She didn't choose this. Neither of us did. We're both victims of one drunk driver's decision, and my resentment doesn't change anything except make me feel like a terrible person. You're not a terrible person. You're a human being in an impossible situation. Some days I don't know the difference anymore." Daniel unlocked his car. "I should go. Mia will be waiting." "Daniel?" Evelyn called as he started to get in. "What you're doing, even with all the resentment and fear and exhaustion, it still matters. It still counts. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." He nodded once, then got in his car and drove away. Evelyn stood in the parking lot long after Daniel's taillights had disappeared, staring at the facility where Laura Harper lay suspended between life and death, where a man came every single day to read to his unconscious wife, where hope and hopelessness existed in the same space. She thought about the men she'd dated, the relationships that had fizzled because neither person was willing to really commit, to really show up, to really stay when things got difficult. She thought about her own life, successful and empty, full of accomplishments but devoid of the kind of meaning Daniel had found in his daily devotion. And she made a decision. She pulled out her phone and called her assistant. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me first thing Monday morning. I want a complete review of the Ashford Foundation's current beneficiaries, every long-term care facility, every program we support. And I want to know which ones are like Cedar Grove, actually maintaining dignity and providing quality care, and which ones are just cashing checks." "That's going to be a substantial project," Sarah said carefully. "Good. I want something substantial. I want the foundation to actually make a difference, not just exist on paper to make my family look philanthropic." Evelyn looked up at the facility's lit windows. "And Sarah? Increase the recommended grant for Cedar Grove Care Facility to $150,000. Earmark $50,000 specifically for their neurological patient care program. That's well above our usual allocation." "I know. Do it anyway." After hanging up, Evelyn didn't immediately get in her car. Instead, she walked back into Cedar Grove, past the reception desk where Teresa looked up in surprise, back down the hallway to room 237. The room was empty now, Daniel gone to collect his daughter. Laura lay in her bed, peaceful and still, surrounded by drawings and photos and evidence of a love that refused to quit. Evelyn stood in the doorway for a long moment, then stepped inside. "I don't know if you can hear me," she said quietly to the unconscious woman. "Daniel thinks you can. The doctors say you can't. I don't know who's right, but I'm going to talk anyway, because if there's any chance you're in there, you should know something." She moved closer to the bed, studying Laura's face, still beautiful despite the years of stillness, still recognizably the woman in those wedding photos on the shelf. "Your husband is an extraordinary man. I assume you already know that, or you wouldn't have married him. But Laura, you should know what he's sacrificed for you. He's given up career advancement, financial security, his social life, probably his sanity. He's rearranging his entire existence around visiting you for 90 minutes every day. He's keeping you alive in your daughter's memory through stories and photos and those beautiful drawings on your wall. He's refusing to move on, refusing to date, refusing to accept that you might not wake up." Evelyn's voice caught slightly. And I know this is strange, me standing here talking to you when we've never met. But I needed you to know that he's still fighting. After 4 years, when everyone else has given up, he's still showing up. He's still reading to you. He's still holding your hand. He's still believing in tomorrow." She paused, then added more quietly, "And I need you to know that if you can fight, if you can come back, you should. Because that little girl needs her mother, and that man needs his wife, and the world needs more proof that love like this actually means something." Evelyn turned to leave, then stopped, one more thought occurring to her. But if you can't come back, if you're too far gone or too tired, or if the damage is too much, then you should also know it's okay to let go. Daniel won't. He'll keep this vigil until he's buried beside you, but you don't have to stay just because he's waiting. If you need to go, if that's what your body is telling you, you have permission. She wiped her eyes, surprised to find them wet, and walked out of room 237 for the second time that evening. The drive back to her condo took 40 minutes in evening traffic. Evelyn spent it thinking about Daniel reading Anne of Green Gables to his comatose wife, about Mia drawing pictures for a mother who couldn't see them, about the impossible mathematics of a life where love and loss existed in perfect, terrible balance. By the time she reached home, she'd made several more decisions. She was going to reorganize her priorities. She was going to stop dating men she didn't actually care about. She was going to find something, someone, worth fighting for, worth showing up for, worth organizing her life around. She was going to stop settling for convenient and start demanding meaningful. Because Daniel Harper had shown her what the alternative looked like, and once you'd seen it, you couldn't unsee it. Love wasn't supposed to be easy. It wasn't supposed to fit neatly into your schedule. It wasn't supposed to make sense on a spreadsheet. It was supposed to be Daniel reading to Laura every day for 4 years. It was supposed to be Mia drawing rainbows for a mother who couldn't acknowledge them. It was supposed to be showing up, even when, especially when, there was no guarantee it mattered. And Evelyn Cross, CFO of Mercer and Sterling Financial, board member of the Ashford Foundation, successful and ambitious and empty, decided she wanted that kind of love in her life, even if it cost her everything, especially if it cost her everything. Because what was the point of a comfortable life if it never meant anything? November arrived with the kind of bitter cold that made Chicago residents question their life choices. Daniel navigated the frozen streets with Mia bundled beside him in the mornings, her breath fogging in the car as she chattered about the upcoming Thanksgiving play at school. She'd been cast as a cornstalk, which she found hilarious and slightly insulting in equal measure. "I wanted to be the turkey," she explained for the 15th time. "But Mrs. Patterson said I have the perfect height for corn." "What does that even mean, Daddy? Corn isn't tall, it's just corn." "Some corn can grow pretty tall," Daniel offered, navigating around a delivery truck. "And I think you'll make an excellent cornstalk, very realistic." "You have to say that, you're my dad." Doesn't make it less true. In the weeks since Evelyn's visit to Cedar Grove, something had shifted at work. Not dramatically, not in ways most people would notice, but Daniel felt it. His colleagues approached him differently, with a kind of careful respect that suggested someone had told them something about his situation. He suspected Marcus, who'd apparently become an unlikely advocate, explaining to curious coworkers that Harper had his reasons for leaving at 4 o'clock, and maybe everyone could just respect that. The modified schedule had transformed Daniel's relationship with exhaustion. For the first time in 4 years, he sometimes went to bed without feeling like he was drowning. The extra hour and a half with Laura each day meant he could read longer, sit in comfortable silence without watching the clock, occasionally talk to her about things that mattered instead of just rushing through their routine. Evelyn had been true to her word about the foundation grant. Cedar Grove's director had called Daniel personally, almost in tears, explaining that the Ashford Foundation's expanded grant would allow them to hire 2 additional neurological care specialists and upgrade their therapy equipment. A portion had been specifically allocated to ensure Laura's care was secured for the next 3 years, regardless of Daniel's ability to pay. When Daniel had tried to thank Evelyn, she'd waved him off with uncomfortable efficiency. The foundation made a strategic investment in quality care, that's all. But they both knew it was more than that. On a Tuesday evening, as Daniel sat reading to Laura from their current book they'd moved on to Kill a Mockingbird, his phone buzzed with a text from Carol. The message was brief and ominous. "We need to talk, in person, tomorrow if possible." Daniel's stomach tightened. Conversations that started with "we need to talk" never ended well. He texted back, "Is Mia okay?" The response came immediately. "Mia is fine. This is about Laura. Please, Daniel, tomorrow." He agreed to stop by after his visit with Laura the following evening, then tried to return his attention to the book. But the words seemed to blur on the page, his mind racing through possibilities. Had the Morrisons heard about the foundation grant? Were they planning some kind of intervention? Had Laura's condition changed and the facility called them first? Laura lay peaceful as always, her face giving away nothing. Daniel set the book aside and just held her hand, studying her features in the soft evening light. 4 years, and he still looked for signs of the woman he'd married in this still, silent version. Sometimes he found her, a familiar expression that crossed her face during sleep, the way her hair fell across the pillow, the shape of her hands in his. Other times she felt like a stranger, someone who merely resembled his wife but wasn't quite her. "Your parents want to talk," he said quietly. "That's never good news. I think they're going to push me again about moving you to a different facility, or maybe about the DNR order. They've been bringing it up more lately, saying Mia needs closure, that we're all stuck in limbo." He paused, as if giving Laura time to respond, then continued. "And maybe they're right. Maybe I am being selfish, keeping you in this state because I can't handle losing you. Maybe Mia does need closure more than she needs hope. But Laura, I don't know how to give up on you. I don't know how to sign papers that say if your heart stops, we should just let you go. Because what if the next day was going to be the day you woke up?" The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Outside the window, Chicago sparkled with early evening lights, a city moving forward while this room remained suspended in time. Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time it was Evelyn. "Quarterly reports due Friday. Yours is the only one I'm not worried about." "How's that for professional boundaries?" Despite everything, Daniel smiled and typed back, "I'll take the compliment. How's the foundation review going?" "Eye-opening. You'd be horrified how many facilities are essentially warehouses. Cedar Grove is the exception, not the rule. That's why Laura's there. I researched for months. It shows. Your dedication shows in everything you do." Daniel stared at that last message for a long moment before responding. "Sometimes dedication looks a lot like stubbornness. Sometimes stubbornness looks a lot like strength. See you tomorrow." He pocketed his phone and returned his attention to Laura. "I'm making friends," he told her. "Real ones, not just work acquaintances. Evelyn from the office, she's the CFO I told you about. She's become someone I actually talk to. And Marcus, one of the other analysts, his daughter goes to school with Mia. It's strange, having people know about us, about you, but also kind of a relief. I've been carrying all of this alone for so long." His alarm buzzed. Time to get Mia. "Tomorrow," he promised Laura, kissing her forehead. "Same time, same chapter. Don't go anywhere." The weak joke had become part of their routine, his way of maintaining normalcy in an abnormal situation. He gathered his things and headed out, waving to the evening nurses, making the familiar drive to collect his daughter. Mia was waiting outside her grandparents' building, practically vibrating with excitement. "Daddy, guess what? Mrs. Patterson says I can add leaves to my corn costume. Real leaves. Well, not real because they die, but fabric ones that look real. Can we go to the craft store this weekend?" "Sure, sweetheart. We can go Saturday morning. And can we bring Mommy some flowers? The craft store has those fake ones that last forever. I want to get her sunflowers because those are happy, and she needs happy things." Daniel's heart cracked and mended simultaneously, the way it always did when Mia talked about Laura with such casual certainty that her mother needed things, wanted things, was present in any way that mattered. "Sunflowers sound perfect," he managed. That night, after dinner and homework and reading time, after Mia was safely asleep, Daniel sat at his small kitchen table with their bills spread before him. The foundation grant had bought them breathing room, but it hadn't solved everything. The apartment rent, utilities, groceries, Mia's school expenses, the car insurance, it all added up in ways that made his modest salary stretch thin. He pulled out the promotion offer that Evelyn had quietly slipped back onto his desk last week. Same terms as before, but with the modified schedule built in. It would mean more money, enough to stop living month to month. But it would also mean more responsibility, more stress, more cognitive load at the end of days that already left him depleted. Daniel put the offer aside. He'd think about it later. Maybe. The next evening, Daniel made his usual visit to Laura, reading to her about Scout Finch and her complicated father, about justice and prejudice, and the courage it took to stand for what was right, even when the world disagreed. When his time was up, he drove to the Morrisons' apartment with a sense of foreboding. James opened the door, and Daniel was struck by how much older his father-in-law looked. The man had aged a decade in 4 years, grief etching itself into his features in ways that made Daniel wonder if he looked equally weathered. "Daniel, come in. Carol's making coffee." The apartment was immaculate as always, filled with photos of Laura at various ages, a chronological record of their daughter's life that stopped abruptly at 35. Mia's recent drawings were displayed on the refrigerator, a contrast of innocent hope against parental grief. Carol emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray with coffee and cookies that no one would eat. She set it on the coffee table with careful precision, then sat beside James on the couch, a unified front that made Daniel's stomach tighten further. "Thank you for coming," Carol began. "I know you're busy, and we appreciate you making time." "Of course. You said this was about Laura?" James and Carol exchanged a look that Daniel had learned to interpret over the years. It was the look that preceded difficult conversations, the one that said they'd rehearsed this, prepared arguments, fortified themselves for his resistance. "We've been doing some research," James said carefully, "about long-term coma care, about prognosis, about options we might not have fully considered." "We've been through all the options," Daniel said, his voice tight. "Multiple times." "We know, but Daniel, there's been a development." Carol pulled out a folder from the side table. "Do you know Dr. Patricia Weiss? The neurologist from Northwestern? I consulted with her 2 years ago. She said essentially the same thing as every other specialist. We asked her to review Laura's recent scans and charts." James opened the folder, revealing medical reports Daniel hadn't seen. "Daniel, the brain activity has decreased significantly in the past 6 months. Areas that were showing minimal function are now completely inactive." Daniel felt cold spread through his chest. "I wasn't informed of any new scans." "Because you're not listed as the primary contact for medical decisions anymore," Carol said gently. "We had ourselves added when you weren't responding to the facility's requests for updated directives. Daniel, they've been trying to reach you about this for weeks. That's not... I check my messages, I talk to the nurses every day. The administrative staff handles medical decision consultations, not the floor nurses," James interjected. "They sent multiple letters to your address. Did you receive them?" Daniel thought about the stack of mail he'd been too overwhelmed to sort through. The envelopes marked Cedar Grove Administration that he'd assumed were just billing statements. "I thought they were invoices." "They were requests for a care planning meeting." Carol leaned forward, her expression pained but determined. "Dr. Weiss is very clear in her assessment. Laura's brain function has deteriorated to the point where recovery is no longer a realistic possibility. It's not just unlikely anymore, Daniel. It's impossible." Doctors have been wrong before. They said she wouldn't make it through the first month, and here we are 4 years later. Here we are 4 years later with our daughter existing, not living. Carol's voice broke. "Daniel, I know you love her. I know you're trying to honor your vows, but we need to talk about quality of life, not just Laura's, yours and Mia's too." "My quality of life is fine. Mia is happy, well-adjusted. Mia is 8 years old and she thinks her mother is going to wake up any day." James's voice was firm, but not unkind. "She draws pictures for a woman who will never see them. She's being raised on false hope, and every day that passes makes the eventual truth more devastating." Daniel stood abruptly, unable to sit still. "What are you asking me to do? Sign a DNR? Agree to withdraw care? Let her die because the doctors have finally decided it's really, truly, definitely impossible this time?" "We're asking you to consider what's best for everyone involved," Carol said, "including Laura. Have you ever thought that maybe she doesn't want this? That maybe being kept alive in this state isn't what she would have chosen?" "We never had that conversation. We were young, healthy. We didn't think about advanced directives or living wills or any of it." "Exactly. Which means you're making this choice for her, keeping her in this limbo because you can't let go." The words hit like physical blows. Daniel walked to the window, staring out at the Chicago night, light stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, Mia was sleeping peacefully, dreaming her innocent dreams where mothers woke up and families were whole again. I promised her, Daniel said quietly, in sickness and in health, for better or worse, until death do us part. She's not dead, Carol, she's alive. Her heart beats, she breathes. She's still my wife. She's a body being sustained by medical intervention, James said bluntly. I'm sorry to be harsh, but someone needs to say it. The Laura we knew, the woman who laughed too loud at terrible jokes, who couldn't keep a plant alive but raised a beautiful daughter, who loved you so fiercely it made us jealous sometimes, that woman is gone. What remains is a shell, a breathing, legally alive shell, but not our daughter. You don't know that. The brain is mysterious. Doctors don't understand everything. Daniel, Carol stood, moving to stand beside him at the window. We had a memorial service 4 years ago. Do you remember? You refused to come because you said Laura wasn't dead. And you were right. Technically, medically, she wasn't. But the woman we were memorializing, she was gone then, and she's still gone now. We weren't being callous or giving up too soon. We were accepting reality. And you want me to accept it too. We want you to stop sacrificing your life for someone who's already gone. Carol's voice gentled. You're 42 years old. You're a wonderful father, a good man, someone who deserves happiness and partnership and love. You've put your entire existence on hold for 4 years. When does it end? When you're 50, 60? When Mia graduates college while you're still reading to her mother's body? Daniel closed his eyes. I can't talk about this right now. When then? James pressed. Because every day you delay is another day Mia invests in an impossible hope. Another day you deny yourself any chance at moving forward. Another day our family stays frozen in this terrible moment. I need time to think. You've had 4 years to think. Carol touched his arm gently. Daniel, please. Talk to Dr. Weiss yourself. Look at the scans. Listen to what the specialists are saying. And then make a decision based on reality, not hope. Daniel pulled away from her touch, suddenly needing space, needing air, needing to be anywhere but in this apartment having this conversation. I have to go. I need to think. I need to go. He left without further discussion, practically fleeing down the stairs and out into the November cold. He got in his car but didn't start the engine, just sat in the parking lot, letting the cold seep in, his breath fogging the windows. His phone rang. Evelyn. Daniel almost didn't answer, but some instinct made him press accept. Hey, she said. Bad timing? Possibly the worst timing in history. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Want to sit in silence while I pretend to work on spreadsheets? Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. That's oddly specific. I'm at the office, top floor, corner office, with the view you're too busy to appreciate. Come up if you want. No talking required. Daniel should go home. He should process this alone, should spend the evening thinking through what Carol and James had said, should review the medical reports they'd tried to give him. Instead, he found himself driving to the office tower, taking the elevator to the executive floor, walking into Evelyn's corner office, where she sat with her laptop, papers spread across her desk, the city glittering behind her. She looked up when he entered, took one look at his face, and simply gestured to the leather couch along the wall. Daniel collapsed onto it, staring at the ceiling. True to her word, Evelyn didn't ask questions. She returned to her work, the soft clicking of her keyboard the only sound besides the muted hum of the building's ventilation system. After 20 minutes of silence, Daniel finally spoke. Laura's brain function is deteriorating. Her parents showed me medical reports I hadn't seen because I've been ignoring administrative mail. The doctors say recovery is now impossible, not just unlikely, and everyone thinks I should let her go. Evelyn's fingers stilled on the keyboard. What do you think? I think I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. I think I don't trust doctors who've been wrong before. I think I'm furious at being put in this position, and I think... His voice cracked. I think maybe they're right. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I'm holding on because I can't handle loss, not because there's any real chance of recovery. Evelyn closed her laptop and moved to sit in the chair across from the couch. Can I tell you something? And you're going to think it's inappropriate, but I'm going to say it anyway. At this point, nothing is inappropriate. I've fallen in love with you. Daniel's head snapped toward her, shock rendering him momentarily speechless. Evelyn held up her hand. Before you panic, I'm not telling you this because I expect anything. I'm telling you because you need to know that my perspective is biased. Anything I say about Laura, about your situation, about whether you should move on, it's all colored by the fact that I have feelings for you. So take everything I'm about to say with that understanding. Evelyn, let me finish, please. She took a breath. I fell in love with who you are when you talked about Laura in that parking garage. I fell deeper when I watched you read to her at Cedar Grove. I fell completely when I saw how you are with Mia, how you've organized your entire life around honoring your commitments even when it costs you everything. And the truth is, I want you to be free. I want Laura to wake up or pass away or something definitive to happen so that you can move forward. With me, ideally, but even if not, I want you to have a life that isn't this constant suspended state. Daniel couldn't find words. Evelyn continued, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. But here's the thing. I know that even if Laura dies tomorrow, you're not ready. Maybe you'll never be ready. Maybe your heart belongs to her so completely that there's no room for anyone else. And I've accepted that. What I fell in love with is your capacity for devotion, which means I can't reasonably expect you to suddenly transfer that devotion to me just because circumstances change. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to know that when you make this decision about Laura's care, you're not alone. You have people who care about you, who want good things for you, who will support you whatever you choose. And yes, I have selfish reasons for hoping you'll choose to let her go. But I also genuinely believe that staying in this limbo is destroying you. Daniel sat up, running his hands through his hair. I don't know what to do with this information. You don't have to do anything. I just needed you to know. Evelyn stood, moving back to her desk. Now, do you want to see the reports your in-laws tried to give you? Because I can get copies through the Foundation's connection with Cedar Grove. That seems like a massive breach of protocol. Probably. But I'm the CFO and on the Foundation board, and technically we're reviewing patient care outcomes for grant allocation purposes. She pulled up files on her computer. I pulled them this afternoon when Carol Morrison called me. She called you? To tell me about their conversation with you and to ask if I might have influence over your decision-making. I told her I absolutely do not, and would never presume to, but that I'd make sure you had access to all relevant information. Evelyn turned her screen toward him. These are Laura's brain scans over the past 4 years. Even I can see the progression. Daniel moved to look at the screen. The images were devastating. Clear visual evidence of brain tissue deteriorating, activity decreasing, the physical structure of Laura's brain changing in ways that even a non-medical professional could understand, meant irreversible damage. The highlighted areas, Evelyn explained quietly, are regions showing no activity. 4 years ago, it was about 30%. Now it's close to 80%. The areas controlling higher function, personality, memory, conscious thought, they're essentially gone. Daniel stared at the scans, feeling something fundamental shift inside him. For 4 years, he'd believed in possibility because the doctors couldn't definitively say recovery was impossible. But this wasn't ambiguous. This was visual, concrete proof that the woman he loved was truly, irretrievably gone. The body keeps functioning, Evelyn continued, her voice gentle, because the brainstem controls autonomic functions, heartbeat, breathing, basic reflexes. But the person, the consciousness, the soul, if you believe in such things, that's gone, Daniel. That left sometime in the first few months. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stared at the images that destroyed 4 years of carefully maintained hope. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. No. Daniel's voice was hoarse. It's what I needed to see. I've been waiting for proof, for certainty. I guess I finally have it. He stood abruptly, needing to leave, needing to process this away from Evelyn's caring gaze and professional analysis. Thank you for showing me. I should go. Daniel, wait. Evelyn caught his arm as he headed for the door. Whatever you decide, whatever choice you make, it doesn't have to be tonight. You don't have to rush into any decision about DNRs or withdrawing care. Take your time, think about it. Talk to Mia's therapist, talk to your friends, talk to anyone who can help you process this. Mia doesn't have a therapist. She should. An 8-year-old dealing with this situation needs professional support. Evelyn pulled a card from her desk. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She specializes in childhood grief and family therapy. The foundation covers her fees for families of patients at facilities we support. Call her, for Mia, if not for yourself. Daniel took the card mechanically. You've thought of everything. I think about you constantly, Evelyn admitted. Your well-being, Mia's future, how I can help without overstepping. It's become something of an obsession. Evelyn, right now I can't think about anything beyond getting through the next few hours. I can't think about you having feelings for me, or what that means, or whether someday... I know, I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know the truth. She walked him to the door. Go home. Hug your daughter. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be hard enough without exhausting yourself tonight. Daniel left, taking the elevator down to street level in a daze. The November night was brutally cold now, wind cutting through his coat as he walked to his car. He sat in the parking garage for a long time, staring at nothing, feeling the foundations of his carefully constructed world crumbling beneath him. 4 years of hope, demolished by brain scans. 4 years of devotion, potentially revealed as denial. 4 years of keeping his promise, possibly at the expense of his daughter's emotional health and his own future. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Isabella said Mia was quiet at school today. Everything okay? Another from Evelyn. I meant everything I said, all of it, whenever you're ready to think about it. Another from Carol. Please look at the reports, Daniel. Please just look at them with an open mind and heart. He'd looked. He'd seen. And now he had to figure out what to do with knowledge he'd spent 4 years avoiding. Daniel started his car and drove home through the frozen Chicago night, past the facility where Laura's body continued its suspended existence, past the office where he'd spent 5 years building a career around his impossible schedule, toward the apartment where his daughter slept peacefully, trusting that her father would keep protecting her hope. But what if protecting her hope meant destroying her ability to heal? What if the kindest thing he could do was finally, devastatingly, accept the truth and teach Mia to do the same? Daniel didn't have answers, but for the first time in 4 years, he was asking the right questions, and that terrified him more than anything else. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. The brain scans burned into his memory like after images, the progression of deterioration playing on loop behind his closed eyelids. Around 3 a.m, he gave up pretending and moved to the kitchen table, spreading out the copies of medical reports Evelyn had discreetly emailed him. The language was clinical, precise, devastating. Severe cortical atrophy, minimal cerebral blood flow to higher brain regions, progressive neurodegeneration consistent with permanent vegetative state. The doctors used careful phrasing, hedging with medical qualifiers, but the message was clear. Laura Harper, the woman who had laughed at his terrible jokes and sung off-key in the shower and believed fiercely in second chances, was gone. What remained was a biological shell, breathing and existing but not living in any meaningful sense. He thought about Mia, sleeping peacefully in the next room, her walls covered in drawings for a mother who would never wake to see them. He thought about the craft store trip they'd planned, the fabric sunflowers she wanted to bring to Cedar Grove, the innocent certainty with which she believed her mother just needed more time, more love, more waiting. How did you tell an 8-year-old that waiting was pointless? That hope was a lie you'd been telling her for 4 years? Daniel's phone buzzed softly on the table. A text from Evelyn, time-stamped 3:47 a.m. Can't sleep either. If you need to talk, I'm awake. He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, I don't know how to let her go. The response came immediately. You've been letting her go in pieces for 4 years. This is just the final step. It feels like murder. It's not. It's acceptance. There's a difference. Daniel set the phone down and walked quietly to Mia's room. His daughter slept curled on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek, her expression peaceful in the way only children could achieve. On her nightstand sat a framed photo of Laura holding newborn Mia, both of them looking at each other with expressions of wonder and love. That Laura, vibrant, present, alive in every sense that mattered. She was already gone. The woman at Cedar Grove was a memory made flesh, sustained by machines and medication and his stubborn refusal to accept reality. Daniel returned to the kitchen and called Dr. Sarah Chen's number, leaving a voicemail requesting an appointment as soon as possible for both himself and Mia. Then he pulled up the contact information for Dr. Weiss, the neurologist his in-laws had consulted, and sent an email requesting a meeting to discuss Laura's case and care options. By the time dawn broke over Chicago, Daniel had made a list of everything he needed to do, everyone he needed to talk to, all the impossible conversations that lay ahead. At the top of the list, underlined 3 times, were 2 words: tell Mia. The morning routine unfolded as usual: breakfast, getting dressed, the drive to school. But Daniel held Mia a little tighter when he dropped her off, kissed her forehead a little longer, watched her run toward the building with her backpack bouncing, and felt his heart crack at the innocence he was about to shatter. At work, he moved through his morning meetings on autopilot until Marcus appeared at his desk around 10 o'clock, 2 coffees in hand. "You look terrible," Marcus said without preamble, setting 1 coffee in front of Daniel. "When's the last time you slept?" "Define sleep." "More than 2 hours consecutively." "Then it's been a while." Daniel took the coffee gratefully. "Thanks for this." Marcus pulled up a chair, lowering his voice. "Isabella said Mia was talking yesterday about how her mom is going to wake up for Christmas. She's already planning what they'll do together, what presents they'll open. Daniel, please tell me you're not letting that kid build up expectations for something that's not going to happen." "I'm not, or I wasn't, or—" Daniel rubbed his eyes. "I saw Laura's recent brain scans last night. Her in-laws were right. The doctors are right. There's nothing left to recover." Marcus's expression softened. "I'm sorry, man. That's brutal. I need to tell Mia. I need to make decisions about Laura's care. I need to figure out how to be a single father instead of a married man in limbo. And I have no idea how to do any of it." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "For 4 years, I've known exactly what to do. Show up, keep the routine, maintain hope. Now I have to dismantle all of that, and I don't know where to start." "Start with the therapist Evelyn recommended. Get professional help for the hard conversations." Marcus paused. "And Daniel, it's okay to grieve. You've been holding it together for Mia, for Laura, for everyone else, but you're allowed to fall apart." "If I fall apart, who takes care of Mia?" "The people who love you, your in-laws, your friends. Evelyn, we'll catch you. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Daniel met with Dr. Weiss that afternoon, sitting in her office at Northwestern while she walked him through the medical reality he'd been avoiding. She was compassionate but direct, explaining that the brain damage was irreversible, that the Laura he'd known was neurologically gone, that maintaining her current state was neither helping her nor honoring who she'd been. "Mr. Harper, I want to be very clear about something," Dr. Weiss said, her hands folded on her desk. "Withdrawing life support or signing a DNR is not killing your wife. Your wife suffered catastrophic brain damage 4 years ago. What you've been doing since then is sustaining biological functions in a body that no longer houses the person you loved. That's not wrong. Many families make that choice. But it's important to understand that choosing to stop is not the same as choosing to end her life. Her life, in any meaningful sense, ended 4 years ago." "Then what have I been doing all this time?" Daniel's voice was hollow. "Grieving, hoping, trying to hold on to someone you weren't ready to lose. That's deeply human, Mr. Harper, but continuing indefinitely won't bring her back. It will only delay your and your daughter's ability to heal and move forward." That evening, Daniel sat in his usual chair at Cedar Grove, but instead of reading to Laura, he just held her hand and talked. He told her about the brain scans, about Dr. Weiss's assessment, about the decision he was coming to, even though it felt like betrayal. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said quietly. "I've spent 4 years believing you could, believing that somewhere inside you were still there. But Laura, even if you are somehow present in ways the doctors can't measure, I need to think about what you would want. Not what I want. Not what makes me feel less guilty, but what you would choose if you could." He paused, studying her peaceful face. "You always said life was for living, not just existing. You believed in quality over quantity, in experiences over possessions, in being present over being perfect. And I think His voice caught, "I think you'd hate this. Being kept alive in a state where you can't think or feel or experience anything. You'd hate that I've organized my whole life around visiting your body instead of living with our daughter. You'd hate that Mia is growing up believing in false hope instead of learning to process grief in healthy ways." A tear rolled down Daniel's cheek. He didn't wipe it away. "So I'm going to let you go. Not today, not this week, but soon. I'm going to talk to Mia, help her understand, and then I'm going to sign the papers that say if your heart stops or you develop an infection or any of the dozen things that could end this, we won't intervene. I'm going to trust that if any part of you is still there, you'll understand. You'll forgive me. You'll know I held on as long as I could, but that I finally chose our daughter's future over my own need to keep you close." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I love you. I will always love you. You were my first love, my best friend, the mother of my child. Nothing that comes after will ever change what we had. But Laura, I have to stop waiting. I have to teach Mia that sometimes love means letting go, and I have to figure out how to live instead of just existing." The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Laura's chest rose and fell. Nothing changed, yet everything had. Daniel stayed until his alarm buzzed, then gathered his things. At the door, he turned back one more time. "If you need to go, you can go," he whispered. "You don't have to stay for me anymore. I release you." Then he walked out, his vision blurred with tears, his heart breaking and beginning to heal simultaneously. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was warm and welcoming, filled with comfortable furniture and soft lighting designed to put children at ease. Daniel had met with her alone first, spending 90 minutes explaining the situation, breaking down several times as he articulated 4 years of carefully suppressed grief. She'd listened without judgment, asking questions that helped him clarify his thoughts and feelings. Now, 3 days later, he sat beside Mia on Dr. Chen's couch, his daughter looking small and confused about why they were here. "Mia," Dr. Chen said gently, "your dad wanted to talk to you about your mom, and he asked me to help with that conversation. Is that okay?" Mia looked at Daniel uncertainly. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. Nothing like that." Daniel took her hand. "I need to talk to you about something important, and Dr. Chen is here to help us both understand our feelings about it." "Is it about Mommy?" Mia's voice was quiet. "Yes, it's about Mommy." With Dr. Chen's gentle guidance, Daniel explained to his 8-year-old daughter that her mother's brain had been very badly hurt in the accident, and that the doctors had done lots of tests that showed it wasn't getting better. He used the analogies Dr. Chen had suggested: a computer that had lost too much data to ever restart properly, a light bulb that had burned out and couldn't be turned back on, trying to make the incomprehensible comprehensible to a child's mind. Mia listened with growing distress, her hand tightening in Daniel's. "But she's still alive," Mia said, her voice trembling. "She's breathing. I can see her breathing when we visit." "Her body is alive," Daniel agreed, his own voice thick with emotion. "But the part that made her Mommy, the part that thought and felt and loved you so much, that part was hurt too badly to heal. So even though her body is still here, Mommy isn't really there anymore. But I draw her pictures. You read to her. We visit every day. I know, baby. And those things were important because they helped us feel close to her, helped us remember her. But Mia," Daniel's voice cracked, "I don't think we should keep pretending Mommy is going to wake up. I think we need to start saying goodbye." Mia's face crumpled. No, she just needs more time. She's getting better, Daddy. You always said she might wake up any day." "I was wrong." The words were agony to speak. "I wanted so badly for that to be true that I ignored what the doctors were telling us. But sweetheart, Mommy isn't going to wake up, and keeping her body alive isn't helping her. It's not helping any of us heal." "So you're going to let her die?" Mia pulled her hand away, her 8-year-old face twisted with betrayal and grief. "You're going to kill Mommy? No, honey, Mommy's already gone. This is just accepting that truth." "I hate you!" Mia screamed, launching herself off the couch. "I hate you! You're giving up. You're a quitter. Mommy would never give up on us." Dr. Chen moved calmly to intercept Mia, not restraining her but creating a gentle barrier. "Mia, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel however you're feeling right now. Your dad knows this is really, really hard. He doesn't care. If he cared, he'd keep waiting. He'd keep believing. Mia was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I want mommy. I want my mommy. Daniel started to stand, wanting to comfort her, but Dr. Chen shook her head slightly. Let her express this. Let her feel it. So Daniel sat while his daughter cried out her rage and grief, every sob a knife in his heart, every accusation a confirmation of his deepest fears. He was failing her. He was destroying her hope. He was the bad guy in a situation with no good options. After what felt like hours, but was probably 15 minutes, Mia's sobs quieted to hiccups and exhausted whimpers. Dr. Chen guided her back to the couch, where Mia curled into the smallest version of herself possible, as far from Daniel as the furniture allowed. Mia, Dr. Chen said softly, can I tell you something about grief? Mia didn't respond, but she didn't refuse either. Sometimes people we love get hurt or sick in ways that can't be fixed. And when that happens, the people who love them have to make really hard choices. Your dad has been trying to take care of your mom for 4 years, visiting her every single day, reading to her, making sure she had good care. He did everything he possibly could to help her get better. But she's not better, Mia whispered. No, she's not. And she's not going to get better. The doctors have done all the tests and they all show the same thing. Her brain was hurt too badly. So now your dad has to decide what's kindest for everyone, including your mom. How is letting her die kind? Dr. Chen glanced at Daniel, then continued carefully. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people we love is let them go. Your mom's body is still here, but she's not experiencing anything, not happiness, not pain, not love. She's just existing. And your dad thinks, and the doctors agree, that your mom wouldn't want to just exist. She'd want to really live, or if she couldn't do that, she'd want to be at peace. Mia was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and broken. Will it hurt her? Daniel found his voice. No, baby, it won't hurt her. She can't feel pain anymore. When the time comes, she'll just go to sleep and not wake up. It'll be peaceful. When? We're not going to do anything to make it happen, Daniel explained, moving slowly closer to his daughter. But we're going to sign papers that say if something happens, if she gets an infection or her heart has problems, we won't do extreme medical things to keep her alive. We'll let nature take its course. So we're just waiting for her to die? The bluntness of childhood cut through all the euphemisms. Yes, Daniel admitted, we are. Mia looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. And then what happens to us? We keep living. We keep loving her and remembering her and telling stories about her. But we also start to heal. We figure out how to be happy again, even though we're sad that she's not here. Will we still visit her? As long as her body is still alive, yes. We can visit as much or as little as you want. But Mia will also start doing other things. Going to the park, seeing movies, having adventures. Things we couldn't do because we spent all our time at the facility. I don't want adventures without mommy. Daniel finally closed the distance between them, pulling Mia into his lap even though she was getting too big for it, holding her as she cried against his chest. I know, sweetheart. I know. But mommy would want us to have them anyway. She'd want us to live and be happy and experience the world. That's how we honor her memory, by living the life she can't. They sat like that for the remainder of the session, Daniel holding his daughter, while she grieved the loss of hope, Dr. Chen quietly bearing witness to their shared pain. By the end, Mia wasn't okay. Wouldn't be okay for a long time, but she'd stopped fighting the truth. She'd begun, however reluctantly, to accept it. Over the following weeks, Daniel met with hospice coordinators and updated Laura's care directives. He signed the DNR authorization with hands that shook, his signature looking nothing like his usual neat handwriting. He explained the decision to Carol and James, who cried with relief and sadness in equal measure, grateful that he'd finally accepted reality, but heartbroken at what that reality meant. He told Evelyn, who held his hand across her desk and said nothing, just offered silent support. He told Marcus, who offered to take Mia for playdates with Isabella whenever Daniel needed space to fall apart. He called his own parents, who he'd kept at a distance for years, and let them back into his life. And through it all, He kept visiting Laura. Not every day anymore. Some days he needed to focus on Mia. Some days he needed to focus on himself, but regularly. He still read to her sometimes, but more often he just sat and talked about their past, their present, the future that would unfold without her. I met someone, he told Laura one evening in early December, snow falling softly outside the window. Her name is Evelyn. She's brilliant and strong, and she understands the situation in ways I never expected anyone to. She has feelings for me, and I think, eventually, when I'm ready, I might have feelings for her too. But Laura, you need to know that doesn't diminish what we had. You were my first love. You gave me Mia, who is the best thing in my life. What we had was real and meaningful, and nothing will ever replace it. He paused, then smiled sadly. But I'm also learning that I have room in my heart for more than grief. I can love you and remember you, and also move forward. Evelyn showed me that. She's teaching me that keeping promises doesn't mean destroying myself. You'd like her, I think. She's bossy and doesn't take my nonsense, kind of like you were. Christmas came and went. Daniel and Mia created new traditions, just the two of them. They volunteered at a shelter on Christmas morning, then spent the afternoon with Carol and James, opening presents and telling Laura stories. It was sad and strange and different, but also healing in ways Daniel hadn't expected. Mia still drew pictures, but they'd changed. Instead of drawings of her mother waking up, she drew memories, things they'd done together before the accident, imagined scenes of what heaven might look like, representations of feelings she couldn't articulate in words. Dr. Chen said this was healthy processing, and Daniel taped every single one to their refrigerator. In January, on a Tuesday evening notable only for its ordinariness, Daniel's phone rang with Cedar Grove's number. He answered, expecting a routine update, but Margaret's voice was different, gentle, sad, final. Mr. Harper, you should come to the facility. Laura's vital signs are declining. It appears to be pneumonia. Given the directives you've put in place, we're keeping her comfortable, but I'll be there in 15 minutes. He called Carol and James, who said they'd come immediately. He called Evelyn, who asked if he wanted her there and didn't push when he said he needed to do this with just family. He called Dr. Chen and asked if Mia should be present. That's your decision, Dr. Chen said gently. But children who are able to say goodbye often process grief more healthily than those who don't get that closure. So Daniel picked up Mia from her grandparents' place, explained quietly that Mommy was very sick and probably wouldn't make it through the night, and asked if she wanted to say goodbye. Mia, remarkably composed for an 8-year-old who'd just been told her mother was dying, nodded solemnly. I want to say goodbye. They drove through the January darkness, arriving at Cedar Grove to find Carol and James already in Laura's room. Laura lay in her bed, her breathing labored and irregular, her skin pale. The machines that had hummed steadily for 4 years now showed failing vital signs, a body finally giving up its fight against the inevitable. The hospice nurse explained that Laura wasn't in pain, that the medications were keeping her comfortable, that it could be hours or minutes. There was no way to know. Daniel pulled up his chair, taking Laura's hand for what would be the last time. Mia climbed into his lap, and Carol and James stood on the other side of the bed, all of them forming a circle of love around the woman who had connected them all. We're here, sweetheart, Daniel said softly. You don't have to fight anymore. You can rest now. And then, because it felt right, he began to read. Not from their current book, but from their wedding vows, which he'd memorized 12 years ago and never forgotten. I, Daniel, take you, Laura, to be my wife. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. His voice broke on the last words, but he continued. I kept that promise, Laura. Every day for 4 years, through the hardest situation I could imagine, I loved you and honored you. And I'm going to keep loving you even as I let you go. Because that's what love is. Not holding on so tight that neither of us can breathe, but loving someone enough to give them peace. Mia shifted in his lap, then spoke in her small, clear voice. Mommy, it's Mia. I drew you so many pictures. I hope you liked them. I hope you knew I loved you. And Daddy says you loved me too, even though you couldn't show it. So I'm going to keep drawing, and I'm going to remember you, and I'm going to try to be happy like you would want. But I'm going to miss you so, so much. Carol and James added their own goodbyes, voices thick with tears, thanking Laura for being their daughter, for giving them Mia, for all the joy she'd brought into their lives before the accident stole her away. And then, as midnight approached and January 14th became January 15th, Laura's breathing slowed. The intervals between breaths grew longer. Her heart rate, displayed on the monitor, dropped steadily. Daniel held her hand and stroked her hair and told her over and over that she was loved, she was cherished, she could rest now. At 12:23 a.m., Laura Harper took her last breath. The monitors flatlined. The room fell silent except for quiet crying. And Daniel Harper, who had spent 1,567 days visiting his wife in a coma, who had organized his entire life around hope and promises and impossible devotion, finally let himself completely fall apart. The funeral was held on a gray January morning, attended by everyone whose lives Laura had touched. Her former students, now in their early teens, came with their parents and shared memories of Miss Morrison, the teacher who had made third grade magical. Former colleagues spoke about her dedication and creativity. Friends told stories that made people laugh through their tears. Daniel gave the eulogy, his voice steady despite the grief pressing against his chest. He talked about Laura not as she'd been for the past 4 years, but as she'd lived, vibrant, funny, deeply loving. He talked about the promise he'd kept and the peace he'd found in finally letting go. And he introduced Mia, who read a poem she'd written about butterflies and metamorphosis and how love changes but doesn't die. After the service, as people filtered out into the cold January afternoon, Evelyn appeared at Daniel's side. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in 6 months." "I will." She squeezed his hand briefly, then stepped back. "I'm here when you're ready. No pressure, no expectations. Just here." "Thank you," Daniel said, and meant it. Months passed. Winter gave way to spring. Daniel and Mia started therapy together, working through their shared grief in ways that were messy and non-linear, but ultimately healing. Mia joined the art club at school and started making friends who didn't know her as the girl whose mom was in a coma. Daniel accepted the senior vice president position, finding that without the daily hospital visits, he actually had energy for professional advancement. He and Evelyn began having coffee together, just talking, getting to know each other outside the crisis that had brought them together. Sometimes Mia joined them, and Daniel watched his daughter and this woman interact with a mixture of hope and caution. He wasn't ready for anything serious, might not be for years, but he was learning to be open to possibility. On what would have been Laura's 40th birthday, Daniel and Mia drove to the cemetery. They brought flowers, real ones this time, not the fabric sunflowers they'd once planned to bring to Cedar Grove. They sat by her grave and told stories, remembering the woman she'd been before the accident. "I think I'm ready to stop being sad all the time," Mia said, leaning against her father. "That doesn't mean you stop missing her," Daniel said gently. "I know, but I think Mommy would want me to be happy more than sad. To remember her with smiles instead of just tears." "I think you're right." Daniel kissed the top of his daughter's head. "I think she'd be very proud of you, of both of us." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Mia asked, "Daddy, do you think you'll ever get married again?" The question surprised him. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday. Would that be okay with you?" "If it's someone nice, someone who understands about Mommy." Mia thought for a moment. "Like Evelyn. She's nice, and she already knows about everything." Daniel smiled despite himself. "You like Evelyn? She's smart, and she makes you smile more than you used to." Mia looked up at him seriously. "I think Mommy would like her too. I think Mommy would want you to be happy." "What about you? Would you be happy?" "I think so." Mia stood, brushing grass from her pants. "Can we go get ice cream? I want to remember today as a happy day, not just a sad one." "Ice cream sounds perfect." As they walked back to the car, Daniel glanced back at Laura's grave one more time. The woman he'd loved, the promise he'd kept, the grief he'd finally allowed himself to feel and process and move through. "Thank you," he whispered, not sure if he was talking to Laura, to the universe, or to himself. "Thank you for teaching me what love really means. Not the easy kind, but the kind that shows up every day, that honors commitments even when they're impossibly hard, that eventually finds the strength to let go. 3 months later, Daniel took Evelyn to dinner at a nice restaurant downtown. They'd been seeing each other casually for weeks now. Coffee dates that turned into lunches, lunches that turned into museum visits with Mia, museum visits that turned into this, a real date, just the two of them. "I need to be honest with you about something," Daniel said after they'd ordered. Evelyn's expression grew cautious. "Okay. I'm not ready for anything serious. I might not be for a long time. Part of my heart is always going to belong to Laura, and I need someone who can accept that." "I know. I've known that from the beginning. But I'd like to try. Slowly, carefully, with no expectations or pressure. I'd like to see if there's something here worth exploring." Evelyn smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "I'd like that too. Slow and careful sounds perfect. And Mia has to be comfortable with whoever I date. She comes first, always." "As she should." Evelyn reached across the table, taking his hand. "Daniel, I fell in love with your capacity for devotion. I'm not asking you to transfer that devotion to me. I'm just asking for a chance to be part of your life, whatever that looks like. Even though I'm damaged goods, a widower with a traumatized kid and more emotional baggage than anyone should reasonably deal with, you're not damaged, you're human. You've been through something impossible and you survived it with your integrity intact. That's not baggage, Daniel. That's strength." They talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Work, Mia's upcoming school play, Evelyn's family, the Foundation's expanded grant program. It was easy and comfortable, with none of the forced chemistry of people trying too hard. It was two people who'd seen each other at their most vulnerable, choosing to explore what might exist beyond that vulnerability. When Daniel got home that night, Mia was already asleep at her grandparents' place. He stood in his apartment, their apartment, his and Mia's, the space they'd built in the aftermath of loss, and felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. Peace. Not the absence of grief, but the presence of acceptance. Not forgetting Laura, but integrating her memory into a life that was moving forward rather than staying frozen. He pulled out his phone and looked at the last text Evelyn had sent. "Thank you for tonight. Thank you for trusting me with your story. Thank you for being willing to try." Daniel typed back, "Thank you for seeing me. All of me, including the broken parts, and not running away." Then he went to bed, and for the first time since the accident, he slept through the night without nightmares, without guilt, without the crushing weight of impossible promises. A year later, Daniel stood in Cedar Grove's conference room as Evelyn presented the expanded Ashford Foundation grant. The facility had used the funding to open a state-of-the-art neurological care unit, complete with the latest rehabilitation technology and additional specialists. They'd named it the Laura Harper Memorial Wing. Mia was there, holding Daniel's hand, beaming with pride that her mother's name would help other families. Carol and James stood nearby, arms around each other, still grieving, but also healing. Evelyn gave her presentation with professional polish, but when she glanced at Daniel, her eyes held warmth that was anything but professional. After the ceremony, as people mingled and celebrated, Mia tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, I think Mommy would be happy about this, about the wing, and about us being okay, and about you and Evelyn." "What makes you say that?" "Because Mommy loved helping people. And now even though she's gone, she's still helping people. And because she loved you, and she'd want you to be happy." Mia smiled up at him. "I think we're honoring her memory the right way, by living." Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, blinking back tears. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." Mia hugged him back fiercely. "Actually, I had 2 good teachers. Mommy taught me about love, and you taught me about keeping promises even when it's hard." Later, as Daniel drove home with Mia chattering about the ceremony and Evelyn following in her own car for their weekly dinner together, he thought about the impossible journey that had brought him here. 4 years of devotion to a woman who couldn't respond. 4 years of keeping promises that everyone said he should break. 4 years of choosing love over logic, hope over probability, faith over evidence. And then the hardest choice of all, letting go. Accepting that love sometimes meant release. Understanding that keeping promises didn't require destroying yourself. He'd been faithful to Laura until the very end, and that fidelity had cost him dearly. But it had also shaped him into someone capable of profound devotion, someone who understood the difference between convenient love and committed love, someone who would show up day after day even when there was no reward. That man, forged in grief, tested by impossible circumstances, humbled by loss, that man was capable of loving Evelyn with the same depth and dedication, but without the desperation that had characterized his final years with Laura. That man could be the father Mia needed, present and engaged rather than divided and desperate. That man could build a life rather than just maintain a vigil. The promises he'd made to Laura weren't broken. They'd been kept, honored, fulfilled, in sickness and in health, until death did they part. He'd shown up every single day, reading to her unconscious form, holding her hand, refusing to abandon her even when everyone said he should. And then, when it was time, he'd let her go with love and gratitude for what they'd shared, rather than bitter resentment at what they'd lost. That was what real love looked like. Not the easy kind from romance novels, not the convenient kind that only endured when circumstances were favorable, but the kind that showed up in the darkest moments, that honored commitments even when they were impossibly hard, that eventually found the wisdom to release what couldn't be held. Daniel Harper had learned that lesson in the most painful way possible. And now, driving through the Chicago evening with his daughter beside him and the possibility of love ahead of him, he understood that the lesson had been worth every impossible moment. Because love wasn't about possession. It wasn't about holding so tight that nothing could escape. It was about showing up, about keeping promises, about honoring the people you loved by being faithful to who they were and what they would want for you. And sometimes, often, it was about having the courage to let go and trust that love would continue in a different form, with different people, in a different chapter of your life. Laura would always be his first love, the mother of his child, the woman who taught him what commitment really meant. But Evelyn could be his second chance, his evidence that hearts could heal and expand, his proof that faithful love didn't have to end when someone died. It could transform, could create space for new devotion while honoring old promises. As they pulled into the apartment building's parking lot, Mia already planning what they'd make for dinner, Evelyn pulling into the space beside them with a wave and a smile. Daniel Harper felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 long years. Hope, not the desperate, clinging hope that had characterized his vigil at Cedar Grove, but the quiet, steady hope of a man who'd survived the worst and discovered he was still capable of building something beautiful from the ruins. He'd kept his promises. He'd honored his love. He'd been faithful until the very end. And now, finally, he was free to live again.